Traveling the Vortex. This is Sylvester McCoy, and I'm listening to Travel the Vortex. Although there might be tangents ahead. Da-dee-da-da-da.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and landed at episode number 223. And much like the Brigadier, we don't do anything on this podcast before the nick of time. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
Very good, thank you.
Here in the nick of time.
In the nick of time, as always. Did you guys have a good week?
I did. I had a great week.
Have a good Easter?
I'm going to start off because this is something I should have addressed last week because I got these last week. But let me tell you a little story. When I was a kid, he was a poor mountaineer and barely kept his family fed. When I was a kid, they used to make this candy bar, and it was called the Marathon Bar. Does anybody remember that?
I remember the Marathon Bar.
They were about this long. They were ruler length long.
That was the gimmick.
Yeah. And in fact, on the back, you could turn it over, and it was a ruler. It had marks on it. It went 12 inches long. And it was simply caramel that was braided and covered in chocolate. So you could actually see through the holes where the braid was. And I loved these candy bars. And I think they only lasted until I was about 7. They were made by Mars. And
which only lasted until you were 8.
Since then, no, not the Mars bar. Since then, I've been looking for, it's kind of like your quest for the Mars bar. I've been looking for marathon bars or something similar to it, or the history and demise of it. And I've been on the interweb, and I've found little snippets about it, about how it was a Mars chocolate bar, and it was discontinued even in the UK because when Mars started, I'm remembering some of this from memory, but when Mars really fired up production in the UK, they named their Snickers bar the Marathon Bar. So they never reissued the Marathon Bar anywhere. So when it was gone here, it was gone there. But apparently Cadbury,
what a dumb name,
over the years, came up with
sustenance for a marathon.
Something it's called, and I just stumbled across this 2 weeks ago because I was watching Peep Show. And there's a scene where Jeff is... No, that's not Jeff. The other one.
That's that one you've been watching.
Yeah. Jez. He was eating a candy bar that looked remarkably like a marathon bar. And I went, wait a minute. That looks like that. And it's called a Curly Whirly. So off to the interwebs. And I found it. And there's this whole history about the Curly Whirly. And
nothing on the marathon, but it's all about the
Cadbury essentially picked up the mantle and said, well, we can make a bar like that. And they called it the Curly Whirly, and the rest is history.
It's a bit better than name.
So I went off to Amazon. Lo and behold, Amazon will import Curly Whirlies from the UK for me. Oh. So I ordered Curly Whirlies.
Now, is that even with the recent Cadbury?
Hershey bought Cadbury, so no biggie. I mean, there's still a Cadbury. It just isn't the same recipes. That's everybody's all upset about. But that was the big hoodoo. Is when Hershey bought Cadbury, they changed the recipe for the Cadbury eggs.
They didn't change all the candy.
I don't think so. I don't know. I've never eaten anything else over there, so it didn't affect me.
See, I thought they'd stopped selling Cadbury in the States in order to keep the two separate.
No. Cadbury here is actually owned by a different company. So, yeah. Actually, Cadbury here might be owned by Hershey's, so they might be getting the crap Cadbury eggs that we get, which everybody here loves, and we're used to that formula. Regardless, this isn't a story about Cadbury eggs, because I don't like Cadbury eggs. I think they're the most vile things I've ever tasted. But I ordered my Curly Whirlies.
Inside a chocolate egg just doesn't seem like a good combination.
No, and it looks like egg yolk.
Yeah, it looks like the Easter Bunny blew his nose inside an egg. It's just a... bleh. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Anything else? Because I don't really want to talk about Cadbury eggs, because, again, the most vile things I've ever tasted. So I ordered my Curly Whirlies. They came a week ago.
Did you have to pay extra for the shipping from
no, actually I didn't, because what they do is they have the Amazon has an import retailer in Seattle, so it comes over there, and then basically they absorb the import costs because they import a ton of other things. And so they pay the import costs, and I pay what it would cost me, American dollars. So
it's
I paid
UK-based candy?
It is. Well, it's Cadbury out of UK. And so I ordered it. My shipment
Does
came.
it come this way around, or does it go over the Atlantic and fly over us to get to Seattle?
I brought Curly Whirlies for you guys, but Sean doesn't get one because he's being a jerk. So
He's asking questions.
Yeah.
He's being inquisitive.
I don't know.
Asking a question.
So anyway,
didn't you track it? Didn't they give you a tracking number where you could see
Keith,
where your Curly
I have
Whirly
for you
was?
a Curly Whirly bar. I'm not sure that's quite ruler length, but it's close.
It's pretty close.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah.
I remember them being thicker than that.
I'm going to break it
Nope.
open and try it now.
Same,
They were the
same,
same
yep,
height dimensions.
same
ones?
height dimensions, and they look very similar. Pull it down a little more.
Huh.
I wish you could see this.
See,
at home.
it's kind of lost on Keith because he's not old enough to remember marathons. Sean would probably be getting a lot out of this if I was going to give him his bar, but
I don't remember this at all now that he's got it open.
of course
See, it looks more braided. I guess you did say braided, didn't you?
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, it looks like a pretzel,
It does kind of look
like
like
a long pretzel. Like if you
That's
took a
what
whole
they
bunch
look
of it took a whole bunch of pretzels and stuck them end to end to end to end, and then shrunk them down,
Actually, if you
coat them in chocolate. Yeah,
cut them, you'd get pretzels. Yeah, they got a little soft. I actually had them last week. I forgot about them, so they're a little soft in my.
So continuing with the Traveling the Vortex eating British food.
Yep, more British
on
food.
the air.
It's good. Very,
They are good, aren't they?
very sharp,
Now,
caramel.
sadly,
He's giving us caramel.
I
on
was
the show.
7 the last time I remember these, and it's been so long that I can't honestly tell you
It tastes
that this is
exactly
what
like
it tasted like. But these are so good that I want to imagine that this is what it's like. The thing is, it's like
The taste
Cadbury.
is very similar to what I remember. What
It's
I think I
like
remember.
Cadbury, not Cadbury. It's like Reese's eggs. You know how Reese's eggs? The reason they're so good is because the ratio of chocolate to peanut butter is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's you can't find that ratio in any other conglomeration of Reese's. The trees,
The
no.
pumpkins
The hearts,
come close,
no.
but they're not there. The
Pumpkins
hearts
are
aren't
near.
there. And the
egg's
giant
perfect.
cup, that's just right out.
This is the perfect, to me, ratio of chocolate to caramel. And they're so good. So good. I should have given him the bar before I was finished with my stories. I wouldn't keep interrupting.
Well, shut me up.
Those are really good.
So there you go. We have
I
tried.
really, you're
Next time
triggering.
in
Whirlies.
Brits, I'll look and see if they have them. That
Is
way
it?
I'll have to
Is it?
import them.
You're triggering memory, and
See, as soon as I bit into one, I went, "This is what I remember," and then I thought about it and thought, "How could I possibly remember?"
It may not be,
30-some years, but that's
It's what I think I remember.
Some things you do.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
So
Some things stick with
that
you
is
like
the closest I can find to a marathon bar, and I ordered 6. It was like $8 total. So I mean, that's a little more than $1 a bar, and you get a candy bar in the States for $1 or more than $1 now. So
You know where you go.
true. If you get them off that truck in that parking lot, Keith, where you buy all your stuff, then they're
That's
cheaper.
yeah. But it's close to being expired that way too.
Right,
So,
you
you got to eat
you
it
pay for what
fast.
you get.
I like them.
Dribbled all over me.
So that was my excitement last week, actually. And I completely spaced it, so I actually wrote a note this week.
I saw your picture on Instagram and thought about it while we were recording, but then I just assumed, well, must have just been he was enjoying a candy bar and thought he'd post a picture. Okay. Didn't know there was a huge story behind it.
Well, it's hilarious because David Mitchell and I always forget the other actor's name.
Webb, right?
Webb, yeah. Yeah, it's Mitchell and Webb is the comedy team. They do Peep Show, and I was finishing up the very last season, and I saw him holding that bar, eating it, and I went, oh, that looks like a marathon bar.
That was
So
a good
did-
product placement. Then.
Did you identify it from the wrapper on the
No,
on the
not
show?
the wrapper,
or-
the bar
because
itself?
if you remember, the wrapper for a marathon bar was all reddish orange, and it said marathon up the
Right.
side. This was the color that he had, was what we're seeing now.
White and
So
purple.
that tipped me none whatsoever. It was because he had it
What
pulled down.
was the leap that made you go? I mean, when you went to the internets then and went, what was the candy bar?
No,
that
he
so-and-so
says he
was-
actually says he's
he says he's
enjoying
eating it,
because
okay.
there's a lot of internal monologue. You always hear what they're thinking, and so he was talking about. Well, I'm standing here eating a Curly Whirly in your office, and I went Curly Whirly. And funny enough, the second site I came across was equating them to the marathon bar. That's when I went, okay, this is the connection. But it was just the visual, even because he said Curly Whirly, and if he had said Curly Whirly and I didn't see the bar, I wouldn't have thought anything of it.
Yeah.
But when I saw that design, and I saw that bar, and I had about 4 inches of that outside the package, and it was that braided chocolate, and I went, that's got to be it. It's got to be it. All our UK listeners are going, well, duh. Been eating Curly Whirlies since you were 7.
We've had it forever.
But if you'd like to send us a case.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if anybody knows where we can get them in the U.S. that I don't have to import them. That
Or a refrigerated box of... it's the ice cream trilogy.
Cornetto?
Cornetto.
You know
Which
what?
I know they're the exact same as the ones you can get in the gas stations here.
Right,
They're just branded
right.
differently, but I don't care. I want one in a Cornetto
Well,
wrapper.
the wrapper's kind of the
Yeah,
the
that's
gimmick.
the selling
I'll
point
tell you,
for
they probably carry Curly Whirlies over at Brits because I have a feeling it's probably a popular candy bar, and so I've just never thought about it because if I just seen it in a
Oh, yeah, you wouldn't think that is this. Yeah.
what the heck? So maybe I'll check Brits next time I'm in Lawrence. Maybe I don't have to have them shipped. I can have them day up.
That's why I checked a candy store in the mall.
You're in candy store in the mall has British imports.
They have all sorts of candy.
Oh,
Other than
well,
just
next
the
time you're in
generic
Lawrence,
gumdrops.
Next time, I'll
drop into
Brits.
Brits. For you're over there more often than I am, so
Whenever I go to Brits next, I will keep an eye out for these.
thank you. They're probably cost 3 times as much in Brits, but
Still might be cheaper. You never know.
I think you should do a panel at British Fest.
on
British candy.
British candy.
And I'll be the guy in the audience going, so what's up with Cadbury eggs, man?
Well, I hear they taste like crap, but they always taste like crap. So
They haven't changed a bit.
I read a little bit about that when everybody was up in arms over that change, and I thought it didn't really affect me. Moving on. Number one, they didn't change the formula in the States. They changed the formula in the UK. Number two, they already tasted like.
You know what I've been upset about this Easter?
I probably offended a ton of people.
I never looked at Dillon's because I never go to shop at our Kroger. At least Walmart has not carried the Sweet Tarts Chicks and Eggs. Or Chicks and Bunnies and Eggs.
I haven't seen them anywhere this year.
Yeah. I love those.
Yeah.
I've had to substitute them with the Sweet Tart jelly beans. Not as good.
Man.
They're all right, but I want the Sweet Tarts.
Sweet tarts should
Speaking of
come
a-
in one
speaking of a-
size. The little roll at Halloween with the mini discs that all taste like chalk. That's a sweet tart.
Speaking of the bunnies and eggs, again, perfect ratio
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, there's something about that shape that just
And
it's like
regular Sweet Tarts are nice, but there's something about the...
just too small or something,
yeah.
and they don't have the bumps. They don't have the little contours.
Yeah, I don't know about that part.
Well, they
I
don't.
just really like that
I mean,
kind.
we're talking a
That's kinda-
disc compared to a bunny, but yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like eating a Whopper versus Robin's egg. It's essentially the same thing, except the Robin's egg has a candy coating. Oh, you don't like the Whoppers?
No.
I like.
I don't like Whoppers either.
I do.
I don't like robin eggs. I don't like.
Robin eggs are Whoppers.
Malted anything is of the devil.
Oh no, I like Whoppers. I'm not a big malt beverage like a malt shake. I'm not a big fan of, but in a Whopper form, I'm good with.
No.
Another thing I equate to tasting dirt.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Because they fool you. They put the chocolate coating on the outside, and you go, ooh, a piece of candy. And then you eat it, and you go, oh, what is this?
Like, it's the same thing with a malted shake. You think you're getting a chocolate shake, and you go, oh, chocolate shake. I love chocolate shake. What is in here?
Yeah, gross.
The meanest trick ever is to put out a bowl of Mounds.
Skittles and mix M&Ms in
No,
it?
well, that's me too. Mounds bites. The ones that look like M&Ms.
Oh, uh-huh.
You come along, think it's an M&M. Nope, it's got coconut in it.
That would be rude, too.
That is the rudest thing I've ever
Actually, I
experienced.
fell for that. I went
At work.
At work, yeah.
Yes.
It was up front.
Yes.
Yeah. And
It was the worst day of my life.
Keith tried to warn me. I came
Stay
back.
away from the candy jar.
I came back after already being in the bathroom because I ate them, and I came back and he said, "Be careful the M&Ms up there because they're not M&Ms, they're Mounds." And I went, "Yeah, I know." Found that out the hard way.
Oh. Worst surprise ever.
Thought I softened that up for you. Sorry.
No.
Well, since he's got a mouthful of chocolate and caramel, what did you do this week? I've got a bunch of other stuff, but
Actually, not a lot. A lot of house stuff. Looking still.
still looking. You haven't found anything yet.
Closing in on one
Oh.
that we like. Not going to say too much. Don't want to jinx it.
Closing in, not closing on. There's
Not
a
closing
difference.
on.
Okay.
Kind of keeping it on the trying to keep it on the DL until we get closer to actually closing and whatnot. We like it quite a bit.
I got to thinking last week, and Holly actually brought this up when we started looking for a house, it's because we were going to have a kid soon. Well, we still waited until we had the house. It wasn't because we were having a kid on the way that we had bought a house.
Oops,
But
all
we
berries.
thought, we're at a point where we're ready to have kids, so we should buy a house, and that's what we did.
Well, we're in a one-bedroom right now, and we're bursting at the seams as it is. So it's either buy a house or rent a bigger place. And it's going to
And you
about
can't
equate
keep
to
a
the
kid in
same
a storage
price.
kit shed, so.
Yeah, it's
He needs more room for his canines and monkeys.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
In fact, that's the first thing I said. I told Holly, I said, it's Keith and Sarah looking for a house. And she goes, oh, they ready to have kids? That's right. That's when we started looking for a house.
probably
We decided we were
when
going to
a
have
lot
a
of
kid.
people do that. Yeah, but lot
We
of
had a
that-
2-bedroom apartment when we were deciding to have a kid and decided we didn't want to have a kid in an apartment. So
It just having kids in an apartment just seems mean to your neighbors.
Adam and Amber did that.
They've been at that house for a while though.
They got the house and then they got the kid.
a year later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not 2 years later. Well, they had the house for a year, then they started working on a kid. So, yeah.
Phil and Rochelle
That's what
did
we
that.
did. I think we were.
I
in
think
our,
everybody
I think
did.
we were in
Phil
our
and Rochelle
house
did that
for a
pretty
year
quicker.
before we had.
Well, yeah, I think they were. Beware
I don't know
people
when
buying
they're-
houses.
I don't know when new married couples buying houses.
Let me beware.
Beware.
You saying people with kids are something to be aware of,
Yeah.
be afraid of?
Yeah. I had to start a podcast to see you again. And I did it cleverly enough to plant the idea in your head to make you think it was your idea.
Other than house stuff, I've just been watching TV. I finished season 1 of Arrow.
Oh, drat, he's ahead of me again.
Where are you at?
Still 3 episodes.
Oh man, it got so good in the last several episodes.
That's what I told him when he said he was only 3 episodes away.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
it's not that we just...
So what was the last thing that happened for you? I'm trying to remember.
What page were you on?
3 episodes ago. I'm watching it like in a marathon, so that doesn't do me nothing.
Okay,
I
so,
did that in one night.
River Song came and went.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know, Mom. Whatever,
We'll allow it.
whatever she is.
Alex Kingston. Oops, it's weird to see her with straight hair.
It was weird to see her with straight hair.
She looked a lot older, too.
I
But I think maybe they made her up to look
Spoilers
older.
for
I mean,
anybody who's
she's-
not watching the show.
She's not young,
Tommy went
but I
back
think
to-
they made her up to look older.
To Papa Merlin.
Okay,
And,
yeah.
and that whole thing happened, and he didn't get Deadshot.
Okay.
I think that was the last one we left off on.
Yeah, the last-
Diggle had quit and said, fine, screw this.
Yeah,
I'm off.
okay,
And-
yeah.
Yeah.
There's kind of one more standalone-ish episode, and then it kind of, the penultimate and the finale kind of go into each other. Actually, it's all kind of moving forward. A lot of bold stuff that I didn't expect. I mean, I gave it lots of props for the first half of the season, and then I thought it kind of slumped a little bit for developments and surprises, but it picked it back up at the end and went full tilt bar.
Now, is Sarah watching with you or just you?
No, she's not.
Not enjoying it? Or?
She tried and didn't even get as far as I did the first time around and gave up on it. She likes her superheroes to be a bit more fun. He's a bit too dark and broody for
I'll
her.
tell you, season 2 hits the ground running. It picks right up where it was.
I can only assume that from this moment, and just from what you've said also, this momentum just driving forward. So, ironically, I've been able to time it out about right, although there's one extra episode in Arrow than there was in Buffy and Angel. I just finished season 4 of Buffy and ready to finish season 1 of Angel, so it's been kind of nice. I've been keeping them all about the same pace.
That's good.
Yeah.
Keeps you from burning out on one,
Yeah.
especially if you're mainlining.
Because I'm rotating between all 3. I'll watch Buffy, Angel, Arrow. Buffy, Angel, Arrow. Because I got to watch Buffy and Angel in a certain order anyways. And in fact, I've kind of sacrificed some of the shows that have aired this week, aside from Flash, to watch it. I'm behind on Helix and
But
12
you did
Monkeys.
watch...
I haven't
Agents of
watched
S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
You
yet.
haven't watched
No,
it yet.
we
Oh.
didn't have time for it this weekend
good-
with
pretty good this week, too.
Easter stuff. So we're going to watch it on our own this week. So
I think the only things I'm behind right now is Gotham and Arrow. I've 1 week. I didn't watch this week's Arrow yet, so finished reading Pratchett's Color of Magic. It's quite enjoyable.
You almost have to read, what's the next one?
Can't remember.
There's the 2 of them. There's Color of Magic and then
This one kind
Like
of
fantastic.
This one. That sounds right. This one ended cliffhanger-ish. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not. It kind of
It felt like a cliffhanger.
yes, but it's not a traditional cliffhanger.
Right.
It's kind of a well, what happens to him? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
If you read, I think it's Light Fantastic is the next one.
I think you're
that,
right.
That is, I would read it kind of, unless you're planning on going through in order. But
that's what I'm doing. So
I would definitely read it now.
Well, it's
before
the
you take a
second-
break
it's
because
the-
it is kind of butted up against it. The rest
it
of
is
it you can
this,
kind of drop in and out.
It's
but
the second in the Rincewind series.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my plan.
I read those two kind of together as one volume and then moved on to other ones. But
Here we go. It is the Light Fantastic.
the Light,
Yeah.
okay.
And then after that's Equal
Look
Rights.
at me, I remembered something.
And then Mort, which I think I've read Mort because I remember death being predominant in that one, and that's who
Mort's
that was
Death's
about.
kid, if I remember correctly.
Don't tell me, I can't remember.
Spoilers.
It's been
Nah, it's on the
been
cover.
20 some years since I read it.
It's on the cover.
Oh, okay. Oh wait, no, I do know who Mort is. Yes, no, it's alluded to in this in Color Magic, and I believe you're right.
Yeah. It's on the cover. I think.
We watched Thor: Dark World last night for
Oh.
Marvel with Friends.
I've given up. I told you I'll
missed it
watch
again.
Guardians of the Galaxy. So when that one's up in 2 weeks,
3 weeks. No,
3
4
weeks?
weeks. Because we got Winter Soldier next.
oh, we do have Winter Soldier. I might watch that one.
That's such a good one.
Oh, if it's in 4 weeks, no, 4 weeks is good.
It's,
yeah,
it's
4 weeks.
basically the Saturday, the 2nd, the day after Age of Ultron comes out.
It's after. Oh,
Yeah, we just
missed
couldn't
the mark
quite
on
line
that,
it up.
didn't we?
Just barely. Well,
well.
it's Age of Ultron's not going to tie in too much to Guardians of the Galaxy. I
Well,
don't think.
you know
so.
what? I probably won't be joining because I think Saturday's when Caitlin and I are going to go see Age of Ultron. So
Yeah, I don't know when we're
we'll be
gonna go
actually
see
watching
it
that
yet.
one. I'll be tweeting along to that, spoiling everybody. Stay away from Twitter.
I'm totally taking my phone into episode 7. I can't believe that Darth Vader is Luke's father.
That's one thing that the
Spoilers.
girls are talking about doing next ahead of episode 7 is Friends with Star Wars.
Do we still get to call it episode 7 since they're not
Star
calling it
Wars
episode
with
7?
friends.
Star Wars with Friends. Friends with Star Wars.
We're already friends with Star Wars. We're
yes,
on a
we
first
are.
name basis.
The hard part is this.
I call her Star.
The hard part is this syncing up copies, making sure everyone has the same edition. Blu-ray to DVD to.
Then you guys
You
have
know,
to
which
decide if
version
you're
of
doing
DVD?
machete.
Are we going to do machete order?
If you're doing that, I'm straight out. I don't subscribe to that. I
I
watched
think it's a cool idea.
I watched Interstellar this week.
What'd you think?
Really liked it. I'm not sure what I thought of the end of the movie. But I think
seems to
that's
be
kind of
everybody's
everybody's
thing.
You and everybody else.
It's that's just it because it starts out as this really incredible science fiction concept, and then it gets crystallified at the end, and so it was a little like Inception. The plots are nothing like each other, but it's in that frame of at the end, Nolan really gets his mind wrapping abilities going, and it's like. All right. No, I didn't hate the ending. I thought it was a fine ending. I think it was really kind of the only way you could end it. And by ending, I mean like the last 20 minutes of film. But
Yeah.
You've seen it now, right? Too.
it's quite enjoyable. I really liked all of the setup and the exploration and the science of it.
The
Even
space stuff was incredible.
the science even of it really is believable, and it's really emotional and.
Didn't Neil deGrasse Tyson say it was the most realistic depictions of space in movies we've seen?
I believe
Like
so.
black holes
In
and
theory,
To date.
to date.
That we're aware of.
in theory,
Until we learn more about science.
there's still all theories, but yeah.
We thought raptors
At
didn't
least
have
it was the
feathers,
closest
and
to
now
what.
they do.
Let's put it this way: it's the closest to what scientists have theorized. Let's
Yeah.
put that out.
Raise the Titanic was the most accurate depiction of the shipwreck until we found it. God, that movie sucked.
Anyway, really good, really good. Enjoyed it. Did you watch anything?
Yeah, I made Mel sit down because she was not feeling good.
So So you subjected her to something.
Yeah, I did.
You're not feeling good. Watch this.
Was it Friday?
Well, this won't make you feel any better, but here.
No, Monday.
It doesn't matter what day you watched
Wednesday.
it.
I don't know. I was
Sean,
off.
it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what day.
Nobody cares
Nobody
what
cares.
day you watched it. They care that you watched it. Let's talk about that.
She was homesick from work and had just not been feeling good and was just blah. The next day, for some reason, I don't know. This is why I'm counting, because it wasn't the day that she stayed home from work that we watched it, but I was off. And those never sync up, so I don't know what it was. But anyway, so I'd kind of had a hankering, and I told her this, I don't know, 3-4 days prior to, and she says, well, do you want to watch that? And I was like, yeah, I can't make you feel any worse. So we watched Star Trek V.
Okay.
Which we'd skipped when we did our lead
really?
up to...
I didn't realize you skipped it.
Because we were kind of running short on time when Abrams' first one came out. And we went through, because we watched all 3 seasons of the original series and all the animated stuff, and then watched the movies. But we watched, we kind of skipped through most of 1. I got her to watch the important parts and said, we'll come back to this one at a later date when you can really focus on how pretty it is and not pay attention to the plot. And then we watched 2, 3, 4. We skipped 5 and watched 6. And we just never really got back around to watching it. And it's kind of one of those movies that I'm like, every decade or so, I'll pop in Star Trek V and sit down and go, this really isn't nearly as bad as everybody makes it out to be. And that was exactly the reaction I had to it this time. It was like, as a piece of late 80s science fiction, it's not bad. It's not good Star Trek, but it's not bad.
If you're going to give one to Shatner to direct, that's the one you get.
Well, and it's frustrating, too, because I can see so many things, but I
had such high ideas.
I know. I know where this went wrong.
It was very high
you know?
It just
It just didn't translate well, and it's frustrating, because it's like, I could go on and on about the poor special effects or this.
And the reshoots that don't match up the hair lengths.
Yeah, it was, dude, swing for the fences. You got to admire that. So we watched that, and then I made her watch The Sound of Music.
She had never seen it?
She had never seen The Sound of Music.
What'd she think?
She was pretty blown away by it, and it's nothing like what she thought it was going to be about. I was like, what do you think it was going to be about? She says, I don't know, but I've avoided it. Like, actively avoided it for years because I didn't know what it was about. And I really enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, cool. And we watched it in Glorious Blu-ray, which was pretty, and I love that movie. I know it's like, I don't know, an hour too long. I don't care.
No, I don't think it's, a lot of people say that. They say, oh, it's just too long. There's nothing that I would cut from that movie.
Just it.
Yeah.
I agree with
if I watch a movie,
it feels too long.
Yeah,
but I don't know what I would cut out of it.
That's just it, though. If I watch a movie and I don't see anything I can cut, then I don't feel like it was
then
too
it's
long.
Not too long.
Yeah,
I don't know if it doesn't feel padded.
It's not like Titanic where I would have cut the first 3/4 of the film and just started from the ship sinking. But
Philistine. But
there's a lot of stuff I could have cut out of Avatar.
Agreed. I'll give you a Cameron movie that I wouldn't cut. I'll give you a Cameron movie that I wouldn't cut.
At all.
The Abyss. I would not cut anything out of the Abyss.
The theatrical or the special edition?
Special edition even, too. In fact, I watched the special edition going, well, what more can you do with it? And went, okay. There's more. There is more you can do with it.
That's still my favorite movie of all time. But, yeah, so, we did that. We finished, she's really enjoying Archer. We finished season 2 of Archer.
So you're going back and rewatching it?
I'm going back and rewatching it because she caught a couple of episodes as I was finishing my run up through the end of season 4, and she kind of got hooked. And I was like, "What is this show that you're watching?" So I went back and we've been watching those. But those are a little bit easier to sneak in because they're only 20 minutes.
Oh yeah,
we can. Yeah. Hey, we're eating dinner. Let's pop one of those in and we'll finish it. Anything longer than that, we kind of have to devote some time to. Like Sound of Music. Oh, you're homesick. Here, you're watching this today. But that was really all I did. I got sick. I was sick of work Friday night, and I was
sick of work.
Well,
sick of and at.
Yeah, Friday night.
I got to go home. I'm sick of work. I'm sick at work. Sorry.
Felt myself getting sick, and I was out of it most of Saturday, which really sucked. We had our Easter sale this weekend, so it was.
Is that why you skipped out on Friday night?
Yeah. I didn't get home until just before midnight. I went straight to bed. I just blah. So I'm just now kind of getting to the point where I'm feeling a little better. So
I started reading Neil Perriman's The Miserable Git, Adventures with the Wife, Volume 1, which is it just came out this week. It's the blog, and it's basically Volume 1 is the Hartnell years. And I had read a lot of the blog when it first started, or from the beginning. I think I was reading probably about a year into it, or maybe I'm not even sure whether a year or gone. I started reading it, but I remember coming to a story I hadn't seen and deciding, well, maybe I'll hold off until I see it, and then never went back to it. And of course, then as I told you guys a couple weeks ago, I read The Wife in Space.
Yeah.
And which I thoroughly enjoyed. And The Wife in Space, which we talked a little bit last time, but it's framed around the blog. So there's the lead up to the years that he did the blog with just little snippets of the blog. But he talks about it's kind of a behind the scenes of what was going on, what was happening. Talks about his wife finally going to a convention, that kind of things, and then tips off by where they're kind of at now, which they're done with the blog, but I think they're looking at doing something else.
So they're done with all Who now too, or they've
caught up.
They went
Who.
through everything.
Yeah, I'll amend that here in a minute. But the cool thing about him releasing the first volume is it's essentially the blog in book form, but he's also has extras because they went back when Galaxy 4 was found and released, and they watched the episode that was missing from that because they did this with recons and everything. And there are other things that once you get to the end of a entry, he has some notes saying, we have now done this. Click here, go to extras. And you can actually go to the extras, which I'm saving all the extras for the end. I'm reading it linearly, but you can actually go to the extras and read some stuff that was not. And stuff. Yeah, and it's stuff that's not included in the blog. So I started reading it. Well, actually, I picked it up and was going, I never got through this blog. I can't remember why I quit. And I got to reading, and I got up to the massacre. Funny enough, I got way up to the massacre and realized I finally hit a story I haven't seen. And then I went, this is why I quit reading the blog. Because I think I got to Web Planet or something. And so I was like, what am I going to do? I don't want to spoil myself. Recon! So I have now watched the massacre in Recon. So I watched that. And then I'm not going to give you a review because we'll do that one of these days. But I got past that, and then after that is the Ark. So then I read that entry, and then I got to the Celestial Toymaker, and I went, I've only seen pieces of this. I don't want to spoil it. So I went and watched the Celestial Toymaker, and then read that entry. And then I think I got, maybe there was one more, and then I've hit a roadblock again, and I'm trying to decide. I think I've only got three now, two or three Hartnells that I haven't seen now.
Oh, wow.
Out of everything. I'm thinking it's two now that I haven't seen. I think Smugglers might be one, and I can't.
Is that one available?
It's none of these. None of the ones that I haven't seen. I've seen everything that is available.
Okay.
That exists.
I don't know. For some reason, I thought that one was.
But no. So I've gotten to another one.
Parts of that one are missing.
Yeah. Everything that I haven't seen is completely not available. Yeah. In fact, I don't think there's any Hartnell now that they have. Well, I guess the Crusade has 2 stories and 2 that are missing, so they do still have some that can be animated. But anyway, I got to that point and went, okay, I don't know what to do. So I'm in this gray area. I don't know that I want to watch 2 more recons, but I want to read. I want to finish reading this book, and I'm 68%. So I've got a lot of Hartnell
what page
that I have seen. I don't remember because I'm 68% because that's what Kindle does. Because I bought the Kindle book, and so I'll likely
pretty spoiler heavy.
It's funny because it is spoiler heavy, but interestingly enough, it's things that I know about it. Just knowing as much about these stories I haven't seen. There wasn't a lot of surprises, but it was another one of those things that as I had read them watching things that I had seen, I was associating with them and remembering specifics about them and things like that. And I didn't want to get to something where I didn't know a lot about it, or at least enough about it. And so it's been. I
imagine that would suck a lot of the enjoyment of reading it out of.
Yeah, it's been enjoyment. It's been enjoyable to read it, knowing what she's going through and what they're talking about, and the references and things like that. So while it's not necessarily spoiler heavy, because I mean, an entry is probably only about 6 to 10 pages.
Yeah.
Is all. Because they do, anyway, with the exception of like Dalek Master Plan, which was a big chunk, but luckily I had done that one. And also, when they're talking about them, they're talking about the recons, because they did it with recons, with the ones that were missing. They plowed through the loose cannon recons. And so I want to have experienced it before I read those entries. And so I guess I'll let you guys know what I did. Whether I plowed through and just went ahead and said, I'm going to just read these entries, and then I'll go back and watch and get the retro reaction, or if I watch the recons first.
Skip over those entries. That's
true, I could. But they allude back to a lot of things this is like this, or that, so no, I don't know that I want to do that. Anyway, so that was another thing I did this week, was I watched 2 Doctor Who stories that I had never seen. So then the last thing I did this week, and then we'll move on to news if you guys don't have anything else, is yesterday we finally celebrated Mason's birthday party proper with our family. So his grandpa Harbaugh came over, my folks came over, Karen and her kids came over. Holly's sister was sick, so they couldn't come over from Kansas City, but open presents, had cake. We did an Easter theme since it was Easter weekend. Cute. So, and then today we went over and had Easter dinner with my parents, or Easter lunch with my parents. So it reminds me, Happy Zombie Jesus Day.
Happy Zombie Jesus Day,
Zombie
you guys.
Jesus Day. Actually, not anymore. It's now after midnight. So.
Which brings me up to a question. We joke Zombie Jesus Day.
Sarah wouldn't let me wear my zombie doctor shirt.
Does anybody know, is there a legit Zombie Jesus movie?
I do not know.
I don't think so.
Because I think there should be. I think there needs to be a movie where Jesus rises from the grave, comes out of the crypt, and begins to feast on the apostles' brains.
Wasn't it called the greatest story ever told? That Zombie Jesus?
With brains?
There weren't any brains.
I think there should be a Zombie Jesus movie. If we're going to be sacrilegious about it, let's go. Let's just
go full tilt.
Yeah. Go large or go home.
See, I won't go that far, because I think if you subscribe to the idea that Jesus rose from the dead, which is perfectly fine if that's what you believe, I don't believe that he went around eating brains. But I think you can still qualify him as a zombie because he did rise from the dead. So I don't see anywhere where it says the definition of zombie is that they return from the dead and they eat brains. I don't see that anywhere. I see the definition of the zombie as rising from the dead. I think that qualifies Jesus as a zombie.
That's why they crucified him.
Because he was eating brains?
He was going to eat brains.
Sean.
The Bible doesn't say
I thought I was going to be the one offending people this week. I don't think... I'm not
after you went there with Cadbury, I figured it's fair game. I just think we should, Apostle Peter locked and loaded, going after him. No.
So, anything else you guys do this week?
Easter stuff.
It can't make less money than snakes on a plane. Come on.
Oh, it could. It might get more uproar than the Passion of the Christ.
Abraham Lincoln Band.
Or no. What was the other? What was the one that had the
Saving
Last Temptation of Jesus
Last
Christ?
Temptation.
Was the one that had the big one that had a lot of
one.
controversy. Yeah. You think Jesus having sex was a big deal to get up? Jesus eating brains might actually cause more of a stink. Don't go there.
I'm just saying that maybe there should be. That's all I'm going to say.
Did you guys do any Easter stuff?
I worked.
You worked?
Yeah, I went back to work today. They did a big Easter egg hunt. Apparently, parks are a big Easter egg thing. This is what happens when you have houses and children. You can't go to the parks on Easter, apparently, because
Saturday was a big day.
Everybody goes out to the park to hide.
Mason got invited by at least 3 kids to go to that Easter thing at the park, and we were having a birthday for him, so we couldn't do it. All right, let's move on to news.
First up in news, the BBC have announced a guest star for next season, and normally we don't really talk about the guest stars too much unless they're familiar to us. And this one is. It's Maisie Williams, and those who do not know, that's Arya Stark from Game of Thrones. She's going to be in...
Spoilers, she was Arya. Oh, she's still Arya.
She still is.
She's still alive.
She's one of the few
Game of
Starks
Thrones.
still alive.
Yeah,
Have you got to that episode where they killed that guy?
One of the few.
There's not a lot of Starks left.
It's been. This is the longest I've gone between watching Game of Thrones. This is it. I'm finally where everybody else is.
With the rest.
This is the longest stint I have gone.
Welcome to the wilderness years.
Yeah, and it was an excruciating year because I caught up in season 4, and then I had to wait like the rest of us.
I don't know if she's going to be a part of these episodes. They're not saying which episode she's in, but they do have more story details on 2 episodes written by Jamie Matheson and Stephen Moffat. So,
Which is kind of the other big news.
And
Jamie Matheson's coming back.
And one written by Catherine Tregenna. So we're getting a female writer back on the show now. Which episode titles, I don't know if you guys want to hear them.
But did we talk about the first 2 titles that are out?
I think we did.
Yeah,
Okay.
at least the first one. I don't
Did
remember
we
the
talk
second
about how eerily related they are?
The Magician's Apprentice.
It's a 2-parter.
And the
Premiere,
Witch is Familiar, which kind of can go hand in hand as being the same thing on opposite sides.
Yeah,
Because the Magician's Apprentice is basically his
familiar.
his apprentice, because a Witch is
his
Familiar
sidekick.
usually is a soul or an animal that
Yeah.
is tangible to. Not tangible. What's the other word I'm looking for?
Related.
Well,
Tied in.
tied to. So it didn't really occur to me until I was looking at those titles this week, and I went, "That's kind of the yin and yang there." So
Yeah, it's well.
You say he's a
Moffat has said that next season there's going to be more 2-parters than normal.
And
Just
since
'cause
we
he
know
really
that
liked how that
Missy's
works.
coming back.
right, yeah.
Yin and yang
So
kinda got-
does that mean Missy's going to have a companion? That's why I wonder.
Ooh,
Because the magician's
question.
assistant or magician's apprentice kind of alludes to the doctor and a companion. So is the Witch's Familiar the master or the mistress and her companion? Which I saw a meme this week that I thought, yeah, you're absolutely right, and now it's spoiled me because there's a meme where Missy is saying, "Well, I couldn't continue to call myself master after all," and it's got a shot of Peter Capaldi going, "Yeah. Your degree didn't change, just your sex." Because he's a doctor, that means he's got his doctorate. She's the master, so she has her master's. So you don't change it to mistress. You still have your master's. Just because you have a different sex, you're not. You still have your master's.
You're right. It's true. I didn't think of that.
That was kind of funny.
but the 2 episodes.
The whole thing falls apart for me now. Thanks, Glenn.
That's assuming it's based off of.
Don't
degree.
think me. Think of whoever came up with that. Think whoever came up with that meme.
You guys want to know the episode titles?
Yeah, I thought you were going there.
Oh, The Girl Who Died and The Woman Who Lived.
Another one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 2 that
All
go
right.
together.
Well.
So I'm assuming.
Well, it's a 2-parter.
The news came out with Maisie Williams, so I'm not sure if she's in those stories.
Does that mean Rivers coming back?
I hope not. I think she's fine. Done.
Well, the woman who dies, and maybe that means we're getting another Time Lord.
Did you hear the?
Maybe Maisie's the Time Lord,
Maybe
or Time
she's
Lady,
right.
rather.
Did you hear the
that would be
episode
kinda
5
cool.
and 6 titles? Were the episodes we lost and the ones we found?
So Maisie Williams guest starring. Is that her story? Is that what she's in? That's the
not
title.
We
confirmed.
think it is.
We think
Oh,
it is.
okay.
It came out at the same time. Other news. Soon, BBC Worldwide is going to release episodes where you can BitTorrent them legally.
10 of them.
10 episodes. And you can pay $12 for the 10 episodes.
No, you get the 10 episodes for free. You can pay
$12.
$12 after that to get more.
I don't think so.
I don't think that's how that works.
To
I think
celebrate
it's
the
a
10 years
a
since the
sneak
series
preview.
reboot, the File Sharing Network will be offering a 10-story box set featuring specially selected highlights from the modern era of Doctor Who for $12.
That's different than what I'd read then. That doesn't make it as cool then.
Nope.
Because what I had
it's a
read,
digital
and I'm not saying
source.
what your source is wrong, because you've got probably a better source than I had. But what I understood was you got 10 for free, and it was a sample pack, essentially. And then if you wanted more, then you paid $12, and you could get more, like another pack, essentially. and that's how obviously the root of this is that BitTorrent is really trying to legitimize itself, which it has always been trying to do from the beginning. BitTorrent was not created to file share and pirate videos that were, not it wasn't meant to make them available to people for free to get pilot movies. BitTorrenting was software that was created so that people could share on multiple levels at the same time
and on multiple platforms,
and basically carry the weight of downloading files and making them easier to access and quicker to access. Unfortunately, the people that were savvy to that type of transfer were sharing files that were pirated or illegal or not paid for.
I'm trying to pull it up.
BitTorrent I've always defended the idea of torrent access. I think that's a brilliant way, a brilliant delivery system, which I think is the next step in delivery. The problem with it is that it got tainted by the pirated industry. So,
well, the 12 episodes, or the 10 episodes that you can get, are Rose, Empty Child Doctor Dances, Girl in the Fireplace, Blink, End of Time, Vampires of Venice, The Doctor's Wife, Rings of Akaten, The Day of the Doctor, and Listen. So there's a free version. I'm on the BitTorrent bundle site right now.
Uh-huh.
Looks like there's a free version. You get 2 video files. It doesn't say which ones, though. A Decade of Doctor Who and a Rose preview. And then, for $12, you get the episodes.
So I wonder if because I didn't see it from BitTorrent itself, I saw another site reporting it. I wonder if they got it. They must have got the story confused.
They might have. Yeah. Might have assumed it was free because it's BitTorrent. So I'm not sure what a Decade of Doctor Who is. That sounds kind of neat. Probably a retrospective Doctor Who Revisited style special.
Well, it says standard files, free, 2 free files, 19 premium video files, and more. You can download that now. Or you can order the premium files, which is $12, 2 free... that one's grayed out. That's why. Okay, that makes sense. 19 premium if you pay the $12.
Yeah. So kind of a unique idea on how they're approaching distributing the show. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what happens more with it, and if they do more with it.
I think the strange thing to me is that they're, and maybe this is to give people a sample, but they're splitting them up strangely because you're getting kind of a sampling from 5 seasons of Doctor Who, or 9 seasons of 8 seasons, I suppose, of Doctor Who. Whereas if somebody picked up Rose, I would think that they would want to go right on to the End of the World, which is not part of this bundle.
Yeah.
You skip right on.
It almost seems like they're kind of
Child Dr. Dance.
picking some of the better.
It's most, on the whole, you look at the balance of the episodes, and it's more good ones than bad.
Yeah,
It's very Moffat.
That's the idea.
It's also very Moffat heavy
because it's Rose, Empty Child, Doctor Dances, Girl in the Fireplace, as you were saying, Blink. Those are probably the best.
It's interesting that there's so few Tennant
the first
episodes.
season. What I think is weird is that they put End of Time Part 1 and 2 in there, which were, to me, a couple of stinkers, but in Vampires of Venice.
That's the low point of the bundle.
Yeah. But The Doctor's Wife's good. Rings of Akaton, you could...
Some people didn't like
you
that.
You could
one.
argue because that one's so polarizing. Polarizing, there you go.
Pollard. Like the bear, it's Pollard.
I thought it was like the camera where you had to shake the photos in order for them to develop faster. Oh, that's Polaroid. Sorry. But you do get Day of the Doctor in this bundle. So
yeah.
Anyway, I think that's cool. I think it's a great idea, and
Listen's
it'll be
on
interesting
that list,
to
right?
see how it goes.
And Listen.
Which has been nominated for a Hugo.
Listen is on there.
That's our next bit of news.
Ooh.
Listen has been nominated for a 2015 Hugo Award.
Congratulations!
Hey.
I think we all came down on the side of Listen being such a strong episode that of season 8. That's probably... I'm okay with that one winning. if it wins.
That one's written well too, which I think is important for a Hugo. I think it focuses mostly on writing, so I think that was a good choice.
And the last 2 years, Doctor Who has not won a Hugo. So it'll be
has it ever won a Hugo?
This article
just says the last 2 years.
It's just the last 2 years. Other shows nominated include Game of Thrones, which has triumphed at the awards in the previous 2 years. Huh. So Game of Thrones is nominated again. Who knows if it'll win?
Oh no, we suck again.
Well, I think season 4, while I thoroughly enjoyed season 4 of Game of Thrones, I think it's been so far the weakest as far as storytelling goes. There's a lot of if you picked an individual story and said this story was excellently written, I think the storylines have been written really well because there's a lot of developments, there's a lot of things that are happening, but I don't think I could narrow down and say this was one really, really good story.
Well, yeah, because all of season 3 everyone pointed to was the Red Wedding.
Right.
That was anything that was nominated for, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And it's almost getting to a point kind of like Lost, where you typically when they go for nominations, they pull out an episode and you watch just that episode. And so without any context around it, you're completely lost. And so that's why a lot of times the more serialized shows don't get nominated, because these are people that are watching it regularly. Hugo's a little different because they're fans more than Emmy or anything else, but that tends to be the issue.
Anything with Oberon.
Yeah, he was really... I like him. He was a good part of it.
Yeah. That's, again, though, his storyline was so well written.
Yeah.
But I couldn't point to one particular episode that, unlike years past, where I would go, that was just an incredible episode.
No, I get you.
What's our last bit of news?
Our last bit of news, and recently in Doctor Who magazine, Moffat says that revived Who to last 15 years minimum. So we're going to get at least another 5 more years out of Who, according to Moffat. He points to the fact that the ratings have been the same pretty much across the board since the show came back. It hasn't gotten a dip that shows normally do. And in fact, when Moffat took over, BBC said to him, expect the ratings to go down, or we expect the ratings to go down, and it didn't. And in fact, it's gotten bigger internationally since then.
That's got to make you feel good, doesn't it? When you take over and you're like, hey, I'm the new boss, I'm the new thing. And your boss comes to you and goes, we expect you to not do as well.
We expect the ratings to take a dive.
Well, I tell you, though, and not to sully the show at all, because I think it's still being written really well. I think that the problem, or not the problem, I think what's helped is that they have expanded to more international markets. They have done event television. They have done very good marketing of the series, and I think that certainly helps. That on the back end of it, you're promoting it well, and I think that works in its favor.
Moffat goes on to say, I thought it would last 10 years. I didn't think it would last 10 years with the BBC Worldwide trying to get me in a room to talk about their plan for the next 5 years. So it's going to do a minimum of 15. I mean, it could do 26. That's not to say it's easy. It's not easy to find new people. Hinting to the fact of him leaving at some point. It's not easy to find new doctors. That could be the danger. You start to think that's easy. There's nothing easy about doing Doctor Who. So if the BBC gets complacent about doing the show or trying to make it easy, is when the show could run into trouble.
That's true. That makes sense. Because from Moffat's standpoint, he's always trying to one-up his own stories.
He's always trying
you have to set that bar higher every time.
Yeah.
And I think this year is the first year that I've heard a lot of people argue that Doctor Who got a little stale, which I never thought that the Series 8 was stale.
Oh, it was probably the freshest it's been since...
I don't know that it's as freshest, but yeah. I mean, they certainly did things that were quite different, but there were a lot of people that were on the other side of that opinion.
Well, I guess if you don't like the different things they did...
I think that's what it boils down to, is the people that didn't like... the people that didn't like Series 8 were the ones that, and I've been guilty of this, saying, well, it doesn't feel like Doctor Who anymore, and...
That means it's not stale.
Yeah, well, I agree.
Feeling like Doctor Who would be stale. Feeling like it went back to RTD, or if it was stayed in the RTD era the whole time, that would be stale.
Yeah.
So maybe sale's not the right word.
I don't know. When you look at it as a 10-year entity, you kind of almost have to. Okay, so we brought it back, huge success, and we kind of rode that crest. You know, we Doctor Who's back, yay! Introduced David Tennant, yay! And then 3 years, and then the event stuff, and then David Tennant leaves, and RTD leaves, and everything, and everybody's kind of like, and you hold your breath, because what's going to happen? We get Matt Smith, we get Stephen Moffat, and everything. Oh, okay, yay! And where there would be that perceived dip, I can see from the BBC's thinking that if you're going to lose it, you're going to lose it in that handover at the 4 or 5 year mark, because now all of a sudden, well, it's been 5 years and
it's a new
it's
doctor.
Not fresh. And
well, that's just it.
I think they approach
so
it because
I can see where
new doctor.
Well,
right.
New doctor and new showrunner.
Yeah.
So that
I can
they
see
had
where
two strikes
they're
against
worried
it,
about
potential strikes against it.
But I think I think the magic of Matt Smith. I think I can say that. And B, then suddenly we're really kind of starting to run up into the 50th. That it starts there with, the forward planning. And so you've kind of got that momentum to carry through. But now we're on the other side of the 50th. So now I can understand why, well, maybe there, at least on Moffat's end, that where do you do for your encore? How do you
follow
Oh
up
yeah,
on
how do you
absolutely.
top that? And with BBC coming saying, "Oh, we've got another 5 years and it's easy," and it's like, "Oh, well,
And
okay."
that's just it. Is the BBC is looking at the numbers from last year, going, "Oh, we want to sustain this, so let's put it out for 5 years." Well, Moffat probably looks at it realistically, going, just as you said, I had the ramp up, I had the pre-planning.
I'm surprised he didn't
I'm
have
building
the mic
into the
drop
50th.
at the 50th, and I'm done.
Yeah, well, and
do you
then
fuck that?
and then to keep it on that plateau
Because
for
then
Series
you-
8, because
yeah.
it really is doing as well as it was doing with Matt Smith.
Yeah.
I think the
I mean,
people
I
that
think
are
the
I think the
ratings that
people
I've
are,
seen, the numbers are down a little bit compared to some of the Matt Smith episodes, but they've not
and
dropped. They've not
that's
dropped below
because-
anywhere where they've been
that's
at through the entire run.
That's because of that small audience of people that got turned off by it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so that tells you, you hear a lot about how, well, this is the death knell for Doctor Who. It's not as good. Peter Capaldi is not a good doctor, blah, blah, blah. You hear that, but it's because they're the most vocal. And so it seems to be half of
People that want
fandom
that,
complaining.
David Tennant
But
back.
when you boil it down, it's not half. It's not even close to a 16th of fandom complaining. And so...
And really, I've seen, even online, a lot of love for Capaldi more than hate.
Yeah.
Now, I think I've noticed that too. In the beginning, it seemed to be about half and half. And now, which probably because those people have left altogether, now I see a lot of praise for Capaldi. So.
And it helps that he's such a outside of the show.
He's
as
such
of
an
the role.
ambassador for the program. Yeah.
Well, just surprising those kids at the experience
That's the
in
best
character.
video I've seen this week.
Yeah.
That's just so.
That's it for news, though.
Let's move on to feedback then.
No, we got one more bit.
Oh, yeah. Do we have a tip? I didn't bring one. So.
Yes, we have a
good.
tip. Eric's still supplying us tips.
All right. Well, then let's do our Doctor Who.
Tip of the week. You didn't say legacy. It's just a Doctor Who tip of the week this week.
Should we start over?
Doctor Who Legacy.
Tip of the week.
I'm going to echo both of those. No, I won't echo the first one.
Because it's just a Doctor Who tip of
Well,
the week.
we'll see.
You're going to have to cut that out now because people have to know that I can do that on command. They can't think it's done in post.
This
I've ruined the magic.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
the tip comes from Eric again, and he says this comes from Addy, ADI. When you pick up a gem...
That's, for anybody who doesn't know, that's
Adipose.
the Adipose, which does the Twitch channel, Adipose TV.
When you pick up a gem to move around the board, try to pick up the one that you don't intend to match. This will force you to see it primarily as a tool for making as many matches as possible in a turn. That's your Doctor Who Legacy.
Tip of the week.
I'll have to try that.
I've done that accidentally.
Oh, no, that's not the one I want to do.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever picked it up and started rolling and then realized you grabbed the wrong one?
No.
No? Boy, I have. I've gotten halfway through a movie and gone, what is this color? And then I run out of time because it's like...
The only time that has happened to me, and I'm playing on an iPad 2, I think you an iPad 2.
I am
as
too,
well.
yeah.
But I've got an iPad 2. And there for a little while.
Also, you mean?
Not
Or an actual number 2?
iPad number 2.
No, it's iPad.
Okay.
iPad 2.
Is the number 2
And
bigger
there
than
for a
iPad
while.
II.
There for a while.
It's a lot of eyes.
If I played more than 20 minutes, it would get all glitchy and it'd start having a hard time catching up. And the only time I would ever miss grab a gym is if I didn't restart the program, and I'd put my finger there and it was such delayed reaction that I'd already be moving and it didn't react until I grabbed my finger hovered over the next gym, and so I would have the wrong one. But
That's if you have too much
since
stuff
the
on
last
your
two,
iPad,
I always shut
Running in
everything
the
down.
background.
No, just in general, you need some memory.
Well,
space
the
to-
last two, no, I actually don't, because I still have about 2 gig available, so
Oh, do you?
of free. No, it was the game was getting very processor hog, and they have fixed that in the last
Yeah,
two
that's
patches.
true. The last
so,
two software
yeah,
updates have really put
now
it
if
up.
I'll play an hour or more, then I start to notice it, and of course I got so used to that in the early days that I would just, as soon as I noticed it, I would just reboot the app. Now, when I get like an hour and a half into it, I realize it's starting to do it, and then I reboot it. So I don't know how bad it is now, but it's certainly a much improved patch.
That used to be my timekeeper, is I would play until it got glitchy and then realize, oh, well, it must be time to stop playing Dr. Legacy for the day because I got sucked into this thing for another hour.
I wouldn't get anything done if I did it back in that day, because it was only like 20 minutes of gameplay, and I was like, well, I set aside an hour for gameplay.
How are you guys doing on Bigger on the Inside?
Honestly, I haven't gotten back to it. I played a level.
neither.
I played a level on Tuesday, and
I'm so
I've been
far
logging
in.
in to get my bonuses, and that's about it for now. I don't want to sound like I got burned out on it, but I played so much
Well,
and
you've
so
gotten
heavy.
to a point where you don't
Yeah,
have much
but
left.
I mean, now that there's new content, I'm excited about it. It's just when I pick up my iPad, I've had so much other stuff that I'm doing that I see it sitting there going, oh, I really want to play that, but if I get sucked into it, I'll have to set aside an hour, and I just don't want to do that right now. So
I tend to be picking up the computer/tablet and playing with that more than my phone now. So, well, shall we move on to feedback?
did we do feedback already?
No, you tried to.
Oh, okay. Let's do feedback.
Our first bit of feedback comes from Holly.
Holly writes, The Return of the Master. Hey guys, The Mind of Evil. Have to say I enjoyed this one. Nice getting back to unit. Loved the Doctor's wave to the security camera when he and Joe arrived to be where the killer experiment was taking place. Also, the Doctor's running commentary to Joe during Ketterling's presentation had me chuckling. The Brig also got a sixth sense when it comes to people lying to him. He could tell right away something wasn't on the up and up with Chin Lee's story. Nice to see the return of the Venusian Aikido. And it was sad to see that it was used on Yates, but it was needed at the time. The Brig went through a lot in this episode with Benton and Yates. I was shaking my head at the candy-striped tent the Master was using to do what he needed before he decided to take out a less inconspicuous black car. The thought of, yeah, you blend was coming into my mind when I saw that tent. Yes, someone has recently watched My Cousin Vinny in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, you blend. That's what, okay, got it. You know, that's funny because I thought the same thing. I'll be on the lookout for anything inconspicuous, and Benton goes running off. It's like, look in the tent, man! Look, there's a circus parked on this. You didn't. And then the guy went in. I'm like, oh well, maybe they're all utility workers use big striped tents over there.
About that, the first time that I watched this, I thought the same thing. I thought that's kind of obvious, and then this viewing, I thought that must be standard.
Yeah,
at least in
be.
the 1970s, that must have been the standard utility tents. For nobody to notice it. That's how I fixed it in my head. Let's just put it that way.
Literally, right about the time I wrote it off in my head and went, oh, well, that must be standard. The guy ripped his face off, and it was the Master, and I went, oh, no, it's not normal. So, but I'll get there. Tangent aside, the Doctor's... she knows us too well.
That's way too well.
The Doctor's knowledge of languages never ceases to amaze me, but I also think the TARDIS also plays a slight role in that. The Brig just standing there while the Doctor does all the talking made me feel slightly sorry for the Brig. Of course, when the mind control machine gets a hold of the Doctor, of course, he would see hallucinations of Daleks. And again, par for the course, the Master is bitten off more than he can chew and asks his old frenemy to help him out. Very nice to see that Unit comes to the Doctor and Joe's rescue when the Master puts them behind bars, and the ending with the Master being able to escape yet again, much to the Doctor's chagrin. but you know he's going to be back to cause more mayhem for the Doctor later on. The Master. Interesting audio, with the 7th Doctor telling Vincent a tale. We get a nod to Zagreus with the nursery rhyme. Interesting storytelling, to say the least. There were a couple of times I lost what was going on, but I was able to follow the storyline with a quick rewind. Looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts on these 2 stories, hoping that everyone had a great Easter if you celebrated it, or Sunday. Hope everyone's week starts off well. Holly from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Holly.
For anybody that doesn't celebrate, it's Sunday.
Or Sunday. Got it.
And that's it for feedback.
Well, what shall we review first?
Mind of Evil.
Mind of Evil, Glenn says.
Should go in Doctor and Master order.
Fair enough.
Professor Keller has created a machine that can pacify even the most dangerous of criminals. But when the Doctor and Joe arrive at Stangmore Prison for a demonstration, things start to go horribly wrong, especially when they discover that the Doctor's old enemy, the Master, is responsible for the machine. What could he possibly want from the criminals, and what connects him with the impending World Peace Conference?
Dun, dun, dun!
It was good.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be 6 parts, but it was good.
It did kind of meander there in the middle.
Which was almost unfortunate, because I found myself really enjoying the Peace Conference story arc.
And
I found myself really enjoying the prison and the machine and that story arc. But anytime they would cut back and forth between the 2 of them, I would need a moment to kind of readjust, because they felt differently, tonally. And then they would kind of drop one for a really long stretch of time, and then they'd come back to it for a really long stretch of time, and then there was that constant tonal shift going on between the 2 of them, so that when they finally kind of weaved everything back together, it was kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot the Peace Conference thing, and then we dropped it.
Especially by the time the Peace Conference.
Well, the Peace Conference doesn't get dropped because it's culminated in the missile, but the... Well, yeah. Yeah, but I think that's what I liked about the storytelling of this one is, unlike the Sensorites, where you get a story going and then it's dropped, and you get another story going and it's dropped, and then you got another. So it's 3 stories. Or there was another one that we just recently did that was very similar to that. I think it was the Tom Baker one where they went to the planet that was like Jason and the Argonauts. What was it called?
Underworld.
Yeah, Underworld. Unlike those stories, I liked the idea that we had kind of 2 separate things going on here, and then they kind of merged there towards the end, or towards the middle, and then resolve at the end. So I liked that. I think that a lot of previous Doctor Who would have benefited from that. And so that worked for me in this sense, because I didn't feel like I was getting bored until I think they spent a little too much time in the prison by the time we got to episode 4 and 5.
Well, and it almost felt like they spent so much time building this mystery around the machine, and then kind of drop all the other storylines to deal with the machine.
Yeah.
And then the big reveal is kind of lackluster. There's a living thing in this machine. Oh! And then it's just kind of like, yep, it's just living there. Just taking up space and taking people's minds, sucking the evil. And
it's funny because
it's a cool idea.
It's almost a new series concept.
Yeah, it is.
Because the Doctor gives one piece of dialogue. It must be I forget what he exactly called it, a mind parasite, where it's, and I kind of thought, ooh, it's like a dream crab, and it feeds off the evil in people, and it's alive. And that's it.
That's all you get.
That's all you get.
No explanation of how the Master winds up with this thing and how he ended up teaming up with it. And they could have even done more with the reveal and then building the backstory after the fact. Could have been really neat to see.
Yeah, like what he imprisoned. He got his pincers out and plucked one off a tree somewhere and stuck it in the machine and built the machine around it.
You guys wanted more out of it than I wanted. I really didn't care about the backstory. I bet they told me enough that he devised a machine with this symbiotic mind that was going to do his bidding, as he thought, and he ended up being the slave to it. That was fine. I was okay with that. I didn't have to have all that backstory on this machine or what it was or what planet it came from. Forget that. This is the story is that the Master is going by his usual modus operandi. He's going to create some sort of havoc on Earth so that he can do a power grab, and that's what it was. There was no disguising that whatsoever. So I liked that aspect of it. I was like, I don't care what this machine is or where this alien being came from. This is what this story is about. So it worked for me.
Maybe had the Master's plan been a bit more thought out.
Well,
I'm going to
no, because that's still in the Master's MO.
Yeah, I guess so. This is only his second story, so he's still trying to figure out a good plan to take over.
Well, and I maybe because of that, when I realized this was his second story, which I didn't know at first. I thought this was much later on.
It almost feels later on.
And then when we were watching the first part, because James was asking me, he said, so the Master's what? And I was like, oh, the Master's locked up in the prison. No, he wasn't. I was like, oh. And then I had to think, is this before?
You started tweeting that, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, I was, I was
yet.
totally not. And then I realized, oh, this is second one. Oh, yeah, no, he's still on the loose. Because then I had to backtrack and think, where did we leave off with Autons? He gets away. Okay. So, but where's it? Oh, but because of that, because it was early, I kind of kept thinking, well, maybe it'll be different. Because we talked about it right at the beginning. It's like, so I hope this one's a little different than the standard, I'm going to find some alien thing and wreak havoc for a while, and then it's going to turn on me, and I'll have to team up with the Doctor to fight it. And James started laughing. And right about the time the Master turned and started talking to the machine, I was like, oh, man, here we go. It's just, dude, really? All right, let's see where we wind up. And it's so unfortunate because I love Delgado as the Master. He's so great and evil and twisted and,
diabolical
and debonair about it. He's so friendly before he kills you.
Well, unfortunately, the story is also a little... It's Joe's second story also, and so she when I come to a Joe story, I always kind of hope it's the Joe from the later run where she's a bit stronger and gets more to do. And this one, she doesn't get a lot to do.
She doesn't, but this is actually what I liked about Joe in this one is, well, she's very confident in this, though. She's not very damselly. I mean, she is used as that vehicle in this story, don't get me wrong, but she doesn't act very... No, she acts very strong. She acts very confident.
I don't remember a single time she screamed.
No, I mean it was.
It's the seeds of the future Joe that we've come to like a lot.
Well,
certainly,
it's still night and day from the Joe from Autons. Autons Spearhead. Terror of the Autons.
Terror,
who was very easily brainwashed and going to blow up unit and getting coffee.
Yeah.
She did a lot. Yeah, compared to that Joe, this Joe, she's nurturing, she's caring for the guy, even though she doesn't know who this prisoner is, but he's obviously been reduced to an imbecile, so she's concerned about that. She bonds with the doctor, not the doctor, but the other doctor, the medical doctor that's there on staff. She interacts with everybody. She's not terrified of the Master when he comes in and confronts them. He says, "Oh, Miss Joe," and she's shocked that it's him, but she's not scared of him.
Right.
It almost feels like there's been another story in between.
It does. It kind of feels like she's grown a little bit.
For her growth and for their familiarity with the Master.
Yeah. And she's logically thinking through the whole thing. When they escape the cell, one of 18 times they get out of the cell, and she says, "Let's leave." And the doctor says, "No, we're going to go do this." She's constant. She's not necessarily running away, but she's like, "Well, they're running around. They're searching. Isn't now a good time to escape in the confusion?" And the doctor's like, "No, let's go do this instead." So they go and do this, and then they notice the Master leaving, and she says, "Let's leave now.
Let's get out of here."
It's not. I never got the impression that it was fear fueled. That it was. This is a good chance to get away with this.
There was some forethought.
Pragmatic.
And then she winds up, well, not succeeding, but attempting to save the Doctor with the ill-timed lurch backward as they're walking down the stairs. Go and save yourself.
I thought that was pretty cool, though.
It was. I mean, it was. Obviously it didn't.
Now, Doctor,
didn't end well. But points for effort.
That was the best cliffhanger, and I think the only time where somebody wasn't being affected by the machine, if I remember right.
Yeah, because that was the gunshot.
Yeah, and I remember seeing that the first time and going, okay, I know the Doctor didn't die, but how are they going to get out of this one? And doing the old bait and switch was clever. And now the angle of the gun, I think, is a cheat, because you're led to believe that it was actually the Brigadier's gun that fired. But unfortunately, the way it is shot is because we shot it here. If you think of it in shooting standards, they actually cross the axis if it's the Brigadier's
you're right.
gun. And so it's kind of a cheat. It's a cheat to show you the barrel of a gun that's pointing the exact same direction that Mailer's gun was pointing, and then saying, well, no, it was the Brigadier's. Showing us that, no, it was actually the Brigadier's gun. So while I appreciated the you just shot the doctor, and then, well, good, it was the Brigadier saving the day. I still had that in the back of my mind going, it was kind of cheating how you rectified it.
Well, Mel did the same thing. She got up right at the end of that episode, and the gun went off, and I heard her from the other room, who bought it? Who got shot? And the credits rolled. She goes, oh, cliffhanger, damn! So she came running back in to catch the recap, and I kind of explained your theory that, anytime you put the doctor in danger during a cliffhanger, we kind of go, but I don't know how they're going to get out of this one. And so it comes up and it builds up to it, and Joe lurches back, and the gun goes off, and we're all kind of like, and then you realize it's the Brigadier, and we went, oh! So, we got suckered in by it.
Yeah, I did, totally.
Unlike all the ones where the machine was influencing the doctor's mind, and we were going, hey, look, it's Wurzel Gumridge making faces.
I think one of the other things I had a problem with the first time I watched this was the doctor's first fear when he's affected by the machine is the fire, is the flames. And I thought, I'm sure there's a lot worse things than flames and fire that the doctor would have been afraid of. And it wasn't until this viewing that I recalled, well, this is just very near the heels of Inferno, which did affect him psychologically. So that's what was being
and he
triggered
has
at
that line,
point.
too, where he says, I saw a world that was just consumed by fire and destroyed it.
And it wasn't until this time that I caught it. And I thought, oh, yeah, that would have been very recent to him. Now, it was a season prior, but that would have been recent enough to him.
What's ironic is...
It's a nice bit of tie-in.
It's not...
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
Probably not ironic. It's the same writer wrote
is that
Inferno
right?
who wrote this
Oh, really?
So it's probably a purposeful
I'm sure it was
callback
purposeful.
to Inferno.
I think
I thought that too.
The nice thing is Joe didn't experience that, and so it made him telling her that logical in order to convey that message that, hey, this is a callback to the audience. Because if it had been Liz there and he was saying it, I think I would have presumed he'd already told Liz that because he experienced an alternate universe Liz. He would have been the first one to say, I was somewhere else, and he may have even mentioned that in Inferno as well. So I was very pleased with the device using the companion in order to answer a question that the writer wanted to convey to us as the viewers, and it working because it was a new character. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it also was, I think, a very, very nice. We see Joe affected by the machine, but we never once get what she's scared of.
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice way to sidestep that and not weaken her character.
On the other hand, she never was as fully affected by it as most anybody else. She wasn't scared to death, for one thing. The only time that it really starts to affect her is when her and the doctor are trapped in that room at the point that it starts going off.
Yeah.
And
I can't help but wonder maybe if that's part of it, that she's relatively innocent and hasn't faced any real,
could be.
Isn't dangerous enough. She's not quite on the same level with Barnum.
Barnum, yeah.
But
Tom.
Close enough.
I think that's what Joe kept calling him Tom, and I think it was his first name. Barnum was his last name.
I really liked how they started the story with him and then brought it back around. And
because he's really kind of gone there for 2 episodes.
And he's just kind of there in the
one
background.
time he wanders in. The doctor's like, "Come back to bed, Tom." He's like, "What are you doing roaming around here now? You're cured."
I really appreciated that aspect of it, bringing it full back circle.
I like the fact that the doctor shows genuine remorse at the fact that he didn't make it at the end. Well, how do you think I feel?
Wonderful moment at the end. And Joe's almost not berating him, but almost blaming him, or at least making him responsible for it. Yeah. And by him saying, "Well, how do you think I feel?" That was pretty cool because it was like you're probably dealing with this as well.
Yet another Pertwee story that ends on kind of a down note.
Yeah, it was.
It seems to be a trend with him, getting captured and ending on down notes.
Well, another trend for this particular story was the capture and release, or capture and escape,
Yeah.
capture and escape, capture and escape. That got a little tedious too, but I thought, you know what,
Going to allow
Third
it.
Doctor's second season, okay, it's going to happen.
So
I'm
think,
just consigned to the idea of it's just going to happen with the
Right.
Third Doctor in general.
just accept it and move on.
This is early Doctor Who. Oh wait, I'm not supposed to do that.
I liked the fact that Benton is given actually quite a bit to do for
Yeah.
being knocked
Concussed
unconscious.
and then
you know?
goes.
Well, and
I
Yates
wanna
too.
go-
And Yates
Yeah.
too, that they both had those moments. And that the
Even
Brigadier...
though Yates kind of gets taken out of it near the end, after he loses the missiles,
Yeah,
and then goes after them and then gets kidnapped
He
by
gets,
the Master. And
he's vindicated for it. I think he
He
vindicates
is,
himself
yeah.
for that for that happening,
Yeah.
even though it wasn't
but
his fault.
It had
I
some
mean,
great Mike Yates moments, and I can understand.
prisoners overpowering a elite military unit. I don't know about that, but okay.
who are supposed to be on guard.
A missile for crying out loud.
Move the missile, the one that doesn't exist. We're going to move it from here to here. Protect it. Okay. And prisoners. Okay.
With nerve gas, nonetheless.
But that's okay. We'll let it go
Let it slide.
because Mike gets some great moments when he
Mike does
you know,
get good moments.
You know, he
it makes me like him as a character more.
I was impressed that he was actually driving that motorcycle.
Yeah.
I had read years ago that, or I'd heard an interview with him years ago where he had never ridden a motorcycle before, and that's his. I don't want to say scariest moment on Doctor Who, but that was his one of his biggest memories was having to learn to ride that bike, and him riding it and them telling him, you got to go faster, you got to go faster, you got to go faster, and him saying he was scared to death because he's riding this motorcycle, at full speed. And luckily, the Havoc guys obviously did some of the stunts for it. But,
Action by Havoc.
But it was one of those things that I remember him recalling that was just one of the most frightening moments for him on the set was having to ride that motorcycle.
Well,
because they had to get those shots of him
Yeah,
on the motorcycle.
Well, when he picks it up after the ambush, and he starts it up, and I don't know why, but I notice these things. I there's a part of my brain that actually actively looks, is that the actor doing that? And he gets on it, and I kept waiting for them to cut away,
Thanks, Keanu Reeves.
and they didn't. And he's on it, and now he drives toward the camera and goes vroom and rides off, but his feet are still kind of like on
Little
either
out,
side.
yeah, like
of
I'm gonna catch
like
myself
he's
if I
not
fall,
on the thing
yeah.
yet. Which, because Mel rides cycles, I've picked up by osmosis some safety stuff, which is actually like your instinct is to do that, and it's a huge no-no because the bike weighs so much that if you fall over, you won't catch yourself. You'll just
crush your leg.
crush your leg trying to stop yourself. It's better to just fall off and get it over with. But he did that, and I kind of thought, well, I think he's a little shaky there. He doesn't look. And then the next scene is him riding full board down the highway, and he stops and he jumps off the bike and he spies on him, and then he gets back on the bike and takes off again. And I was like, that was actually Mike. He actually did that. That was kind of cool. And I wondered if that was something they taught him, and trained him how to do, or if he just happened to have that,
I remember from the interview, it wasn't like they even trained him to do it. They just said, okay, we've got this shot.
You're going to ride on the bike.
He got on and rode the bike. And he was terrified because he'd never ridden a bike before.
Nowadays, they ask the actors,
Motorcycle.
can you ride the motorcycle? And you say, yes, absolutely. And then you go out on the weekend and find somebody to train you how to do it before you go shoot.
I got to ride a motorcycle this week.
Oh, wait.
Can you ride a horse? Yeah, absolutely. I can ride a horse.
Carry always.
But
Yeah, I can ride a horse.
I can ride a horse.
I've never ridden a horse in my life.
But the Mike bits were great. The Benton bits were great.
Yeah.
Even though, getting taken out. And I was really scared that his head was going to get stuck in that fence when he kind of slumps over. And yeah, that was like.
And the brig stuff is great too.
The brig
even
stuff
though
is great.
He kind of gets sidelined for a little bit too, and is in the background, and then comes back around and leads the. I loved the disguise and them getting into the prison. That was just great stuff.
Here's what I liked about the Brigadier in this story: is at the beginning, the Doctor is really giving him a hard time because he drags the Doctor along with him to talk to the.
Well, he's still kind of unwillingly
to
being there
the
and fighting
Chinese ambassador, and the doctor give him his what for because he starts talking to the ambassador in China, and they end up having, it's supposed to be the brigadier there representing the UK and the UN, and he's there supposed to make the negotiations. And each time he tries to engage in these negotiations, the doctor and the guy's getting all palsy and talking in or it wasn't Mandarin, was it Cantonese? And because the guy's impressed, and the doctor knows Cantonese so well, and so they have this conversation, and you just see the brigadier just kind of doing the eye roll and like. Okay.
I deserved this.
So you get that. You get those moments. And I'm like, oh, wow, the doctor's really just giving it to him. And then at the end, there's almost a role reversal because then the doctor is the one that's like frustrated with the brigadier and everything the brigadier is doing is not the way the doctor wants to do it. And every time, and especially at the very end, when the brigadier gives him that little smug smile, I thought, oh, this is payback right here is what this is.
Especially coming on the heels of the doctors ranting and raving about, you must go to the prison, you must shut down the machine, you must do this. And the brig says, all right. And the doctor kind of stops, like, whoa, wait, I won? You're going to give me one? Says, yeah, as soon as we go take care of this, we'll go do that. Oh, all right. Just like, you can almost hear... Sucked the wind out of those sails, didn't we? They had such a great, and even when the doctor was temperamental and frustrated and you could tell that they've kind of reached that point in their relationship where they're just gonna, okay, whatever.
Right. I'm gonna give you lip service and do what I want to do.
Do you think you could possibly arrive not in the nick of time? Or before the nick of time?
Great little banter scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the brig doing an accent. I got all the governor's wine in here. You really want me to take it back and tell them you didn't want it? They'll think you're balmy.
All right, hold on. I thought that was a clever ruse, too. That whole disguised and pretending to be delivery service. That was pretty cool.
Although, watching that scene, I wondered how many prisoners were going to survive the entire ordeal and how much they were just killing.
Yeah, well, we lost as many unit soldiers as we lost prisoners. But
I did have to giggle just a moment when whatever he was, the major that was kind of there in the mobile headquarters. It's a bit like a film, isn't it, sir? It's like, you're not going to make it past.
Yeah,
you're not going to make it past this episode, pal. The brig's going to replace you. But when he's going on about,
was it Major Cosworth?
I think it was Major. Yeah. He says, "Have you ever been to this prison? Have you ever seen this prison? It's an old fortress. We would need an army to storm it." And I thought to myself,
"You have an army." Wait, that was another moment.
Get on the phone to Geneva. When call Benton, the regulars.
Benton and the two other guys, three other guys. Benton and the three other guys. There's a 4-man crew, and they're sneaking up from the back while the action's happening in front. They're sneaking up the back of this castle, and as they go up the stairs, it's Benton in the middle, and these two guys flanking the sides, and one guy in the rear. And Benton turns around and gives this big old giant wave, like. Come on, men! And like, there's going to be 40 other guys following them up, and it's still just the 4. And I thought, who are you calling to?
The rest of the guys were down in the tunnel. It was all. Did you see them stairs? It was a lot of stairs.
It took them a while to get up.
We're coming, Sergeant. The other thing I thought was pretty cool was when Benton gets handed interim governor.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not let it go to your head now, Benton.
And the first thing, ring. And he's looking at this desk like...
He's trying to figure out how to get the phone.
Who puts a phone in a box? Well, that's what I want to know.
The funny thing is that the doctor and Joe are in there waiting because they've escaped. And Joe says, is there a phone? And he says, well, yeah, of course there's a phone. And she goes, well, we'll call somebody. And she goes over to it. And the doctor, without even looking at it, says, well, it's locked up. It'd be locked up. And I thought, okay, that makes sense. They want to lock it so that nobody can get in there and use it. But what happens when the phone rings and Benton sits down and hasn't done a darn thing except for shuffle a couple of papers, opens the box right up, and I thought, Doctor, you should check that box because it might not have been locked.
Well, as we know, the doctor just assumes everything's locked. Just like the prison and the doctor.
And the box was wooden, so he wouldn't have been able to sonic it.
He could have saved himself a lot of time if he'd have started those calculations then. What are you doing? I'm trying to unlock a box. What's in the box? A phone. Are you kidding me? Anybody else get a little titter of excitement when he says, "I ever tell you about the time I was in the Tower of London?" And I went, "Oh,
yeah.
Oh, wait, that doesn't fit."
Sir Walter Raleigh.
Well, that started being such a great story, and then we cut away. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
I thought the
give
same
me
thing.
or something.
That was weird.
How many name drops did we get in this?
I
We
kind
got
of
Walter
expected
Raleigh
it
and
to a point, and then it just kept going. And I thought, oh, they're actually going to give us a story, and then they
there were a
cut
couple
away.
of those where there was voiceover over the transition into the next scene, but you
Yeah.
still didn't get enough of it to finish up what the thought was.
In my head was, more story time with the doctor.
He tends to do that with Joe when they're locked up. Instead of
Still not as good as the Draconians when they're in the cell and the Master's eavesdropping.
Oh, Frontier.
oh, yeah.
Frontier in Space. That's the greatest story time with Joe moment ever. But yeah, this is definitely one, and I even liked the kind of cheesy effect of when the machine suddenly becomes teleporting, and it's like, for just shaking the camera and throwing stuff in front of the screen and giving it one of these.
No, that was
effects.
cool. That
like,
was cool.
That's kind
But
of
whenever
cool.
the thing traveled and would
Just
escape,
wavy
it was just the
lines.
wavy lines, and I thought, well, this is like I could see Wayne and Garth going. What the heck is that?
I'm flashing back.
Yeah, I was fine with it because I was enjoying the story so much.
Yeah.
And this is my second watch through in less than a year. So
This is just one of those that I think is maybe the sum is not as good as the parts. Like, we've talked a lot about the little bits that we really, really enjoyed,
It's
but it
not
doesn't
one I don't
necessarily
think I would-
add up to a great episode, but it's still
I
a
don't think
fun
I'd go back
watch.
to a
great
lot.
story.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones though that I could find myself going back and watching again, maybe because of the sum of its parts, because of the parts and not necessarily the sum. But it helps that we broke this up over 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing when I watched it last time. In fact, I broke it up into 3 parts because I watched 2 episodes, and then the next day I'd watch 2 more because I was watching them closer together than a week apart. But and it was it's one of those stories that I didn't get bored. I was compelled by what was going on. It was the 5 and 6 where I felt like we were just a little in the prison a little too long. But overall, I thought it was a good story. The Master had, while it be very much in his MO, and it's something familiar that especially the Master we're familiar with because we've seen more Master stories than the viewer at the time would have seen. This would have been the second Master story. So nobody would have gone, well, that's very much like the Master. But this is one of those stories that establishes kind of that method of how the Master works and what he does, and the thing that kind of became repetitive after a while. But
One of the things I think the 6th part helps is the Master. And it doesn't, until you stop to think about it, oh yeah, that plan is pretty similar. When you're watching it, especially when you split it up, it doesn't feel like it's the same old, same old.
It seems very calculating, and you aren't let into what the whole plan is. I think by the 4th episode, we know they're going to get. That's what the goal is to go get the missile. Obviously, he's using the peace conferences for some reason.
Yeah.
But you don't really kind of know the whole. In fact, I thought it was going to be more of the hypnosis and infiltrating and that kind of thing, and that's kind of left alone after he gets into the prison. And
Had I not known the Doctor's or the Master's MO, I would not have walked away from this one going, "Oh yeah, that was just like Terry Otto's."
No, I would agree.
Well,
I can see it helps
Well, it
establish,
wasn't-
establish the MO, but
it wasn't like Terror in the sense. I mean, it was him using a alien species in order to gain momentum, but yeah, by the second one, I don't think you necessarily see that coming. You don't go, "Oh, this is just like last week." You don't say that.
No.
It's not until you've seen a lot of Master stories that you go, "Wow, this guy is just a
and when you
one-trick
mainline
pony."
them and
and this
not separate them by weeks,
Right.
He even managed to surprise me because even though I knew going into this that, and this is my first watch on this one, but I knew going into it, the MO, I knew going into it that this is probably going to tie in with that. And, here's this missile. Well, I wonder what he's going to go after,
Right.
So we get to the thing, and he's got the missile. Well, I'm right in line with the Briggs thinking that it's at the prison. That's where I would have taken it, That's where I thought he was going to take it. And then they show up at an airplane hangar, and I'm like, whoa, this is a new location. What are you doing here? And they leave it, and they goes on, and then the Master drives on. I love the conversation when, the main henchman, not Scorby,
Keller,
no.
Mailer.
Mailer, when he calls and says, "I want you back here because we've got problems." And the master's like, "I'm busy. I
can't. It's out of the question.
I've got stuff to do." You know, he's like, "You get back here or else." "Oh, all right, very well."
And it wasn't much of a threat either.
No,
but I think I also got the impression that it was more of the master going, "Well, if you want something done, you know,
gotta do it yourself."
But I totally, and so it's like, you're just going to leave the missile off and, okay. So then I was really entranced, like, what's going to happen now? And I loved this conversation with Yates. You can pretend to wake up now anytime, Captain. Or stop pretending to be asleep. Like I said, definitely great bits all throughout this thing.
I think before we move on, we should touch a little bit on the colorization process, because this was one of the ones that was fully black and white at one point.
Yep.
And episode 1, I could tell it was colorized.
I could tell in episode 1
and that was
as well.
like parts of episode 5 or 6 I could tell, but the rest of it I couldn't tell. And apparently they changed the format. I think they did a really good job with how they did colorizing on it.
With the exception of a couple of the almost, what's the word I'm looking for? The scene almost, it's not a jump cut, but it was almost a kind of a...
Like a push zoom?
Yeah. With the exception of a couple of those in episode 1. That's what tipped me off to the fact that it was colorized, was in episode 1. Other than that, I didn't notice any of it throughout the thing.
There was some near the end that
up.
I noticed that it looked a little... I could see the gray through it a little bit.
You know, it had a good enough color palette, and it was consistent enough through the rest of the episodes that there was at no point in time that it jumped out to me, and then I thought to myself, wow, this was been completely colorized.
Yeah.
In fact, I may not have even noticed until I saw somebody on Twitter comment, hey, this has been colorized.
Unfortunately, I come at this from a different advantage because I knew enough history that I knew that there's a number of Pertwee films that existed in black and white, and it wasn't until years later that they found VHS copy, or I don't even think it was, what do you call it? It's kinescope here, but where they actually shoot on a monitor. But because they weren't doing that at this time, they were actually doing it on videotape. But they had videotape copies of it. But unfortunately, the video had degraded so much that it had lost a lot of its color saturation, and everything like that. So the video is grainy. So what they did is they put it into a computer, and what they did is they just took the color out. So you've got the imperfect video quality still there on the original or the copy, but also all they did is grab the color, and they essentially just went and overlaid it over the black and white film print that they had, or video print that they had. I think even at that time they had video. And what they did is by matching that up, they could kind of, because with the exception of, I think they had to take the colorization from something that was not PAL format, and there had to be a little bit of conversion, and I think there was a little bit of cropping as well. But by overlaying that over the black and white, it essentially brought all of the colors back into it, and so that's how they did it.
So it wasn't a true colorization.
No, they did not.
Process.
They actually lifted
the
color from another copy and put it onto the more clean black and white copy that they had, and really just kind of recorded it again that way. Now that's why a lot of times you do see in movement, you don't see it quite match up because the frame rate is a little different.
Yeah.
And so they have to go in and they have to manipulate that a little bit, and they did in scenes that there was a large amount of movement in. But that's how they do it, is they really just kind of overlaid the color back over the print. That's simply how they did it. And it's remarkable that they are able to get the clean enough copy that they do here. But knowing that, I already noticed a lot of the color ghosting a little bit and things like that, even the first time that I watched it. So they did that process with a lot of them. I believe The Demons has at least 2 episodes, and maybe even more, because there's a colorization special on that one. I think it was that one, the colorization.
I know James was asking about a colorization special feature.
But so me knowing that, I went into it already knowing, okay, well, this isn't going to be the best visually, but it's neat to hear you guys say that. I really didn't notice it, because it certainly means the process works like they want it to work.
Well,
I think it definitely does.
I tend to notice colorization in movies when, if it's something that they've gone back, even if it's not a film that I've seen before, but I can just tell this has been colorized, or this looks like this has been colorized. And sometimes it isn't. Sometimes they just shot it that way, and you go, this looks like it's been colorized. I was like, no, it was just bland.
Well, and that's the thing with the first episode, some of it was almost too vibrant. then everything. Some parts were almost brighter than others, and that's how I could tell.
Well, I
it was
think the thing when you have the
So I chalk that more up to the sync.
when you're bringing the color out of the degraded video copy, what happens is you've also your color saturation isn't quite there. So when you bring it over, you're going to get more of the reds and less of the greens, and then that's what happens. And I think in this one, fortunately, what they had going for him is he didn't have his green velvet; he had his red velvet on.
Yeah.
So that automatically was okay. This is going to work, and that's why I think the colorization of it is just slightly on the pink side than it is on the blue side.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
It's still impressive.
It is
either way. Like I said, 'cause it doesn't look
as far as
like a normal
restoration
colorization
goes.
job.
As far as restoration goes, the Doctor Who team has been doing wonderful things by doing this, restoring the color to the Pertwee episodes that they didn't have originally, and by taking it and the Vidfire process, which I think is just an amazing amount of technology in order to make something from film look like it did again and make it video look again, which they've done with a lot of the Patrick Troughton stuff.
Yeah.
It's just it's phenomenal that they're able to do that kind of stuff for these old shows that are very old and arguably have a limited audience because not everybody's going to pick up a classic Doctor Who.
Oh yeah, thoroughly impressed.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to Master?
Okay.
Many years ago, on a dark and stormy night, the disfigured and enigmatic Dr. John Smith invited his closest friends, Inspector Victor Schaefer and his wife, to a dinner to celebrate his birthday. A mere few hours later, all the occupants of that house had been changed. Some were dead, others mentally scarred forever by the events of that night. So what happened to the distinguished dinner guests on that evening? Perhaps we'll never know, but two clues have led to much speculation. Found outside the study window, a charred umbrella with a curved red handle, and found inside the house a blood-stained copy of Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. For one person, this night represented an ending to 1,000 years of darkness, and an ending to 10 years of light. But for everyone else, is there no ending of this one night of hell? Dun, dun, dun!
I'd easily say this is one of the best Big Finish I've ever listened to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I don't know if I'd have said that until part 4. Like, it was good.
I love it.
It was solidly good
all the way,
through
though,
it. But then part 4 came on. I was like, oh.
I agree with you, but because this story starts out as and mostly because you don't know what's going on here. And I love that aspect. I like the idea of, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. And it does. It starts very high. But it continually ramps up, and then it just, boom, smacks you in the face with the fourth story. And it's like, fourth episode is like, wow.
Yeah.
That's just really, really well done.
I mean, you go into it, and you know it's called Master, and you assume it's about the Master. And then there's the hints that when they're arriving to go to dinner with John Smith, and Jade calls him Master. And it's like, oh, is that what's... And then I couldn't quite tell if it was the actor or not. And because his voice was so different between John Smith and the Master that there was just enough of a change that at first I was like, I can't tell if that's the actor that's going to be the Master or not. And so getting to go that ride, trying to figure out what they were going to do and how they were working it was so well done.
For me, right away, I knew it was Jeffrey Beavers. Because I have always thought, and the stuff that I've heard Jeffrey Beavers in, and Light at the End would have been one of them as well, I have always thought that Jeffrey Beavers could, at least voice-wise, be Boris Karloff in some sort of audio form. Because I think they have a very similar voice. So coming into this, immediately I went, okay, that's Jeffrey Beavers. And what does Big Finish do? They bring Beavers back when they do a Master story. And this one, obviously, is a Master story from the title. So I immediately went to, okay, this is
well,
he's the Master.
I kind of pieced the two together fairly early, but then
but you're right.
I got so sucked
he does
into
differentiate the voice,
story.
I'll give you that.
Yeah. And I got so sucked into the story, I forgot that, oh yeah, this is supposed to be a Master story, and the Master's supposed to be here somewhere. I got so engrossed by everything that was going on in the house. It was so Agatha Christie-esque, almost Mary Shelley-esque, in the kind of
Oh, it's very
supposed
Jekyll and
origin.
Hyde.
Yeah.
And Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
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 I thought for a moment
very Victorian.
that's where we were going with it. And
I did too.
I was almost a little disappointed when I went, I kind of really hope we don't go there. And then we didn't. And it was like, oh, okay, cool.
I was so pleased that it wasn't John Smith, the one that was the killing. They kind of they could have easily gone that way, and they didn't.
You said Victorian. I think you're looking for Edwardian.
Yeah, Edwardian. Yeah, that's what I meant.
One or the other. I like how they played with us, too, that right at the beginning that you get John Smith. And so we automatically go, oh. But I thought this was a Master story.
Wait a minute.
And then Jade calls him Master, and you're like, oh. Well, now I don't know what to think.
I love
Here,
the kind of
okay.
almost
I'll bite into that. Why not?
It's almost human nature, family, blood reversal.
Yeah, it is
And that's
actually.
what
in
I
a way.
thought of through at first when I was like, okay, so he's Dr. John Smith, and he's obviously thinks he's human, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't until much later that they talked about the burning and how he looked, and then that conversation when the doctor finally shows up in episode 3, I think it is, and that conversation.
Was it that late? It was at the end of episode 2.
Yeah, but when they after the doctor recovers. And they have that
conversation
about
that conversation did
that morality and all of that. Was such a fascinating just listening to them debate this and discuss this was just so fascinating, at least to me.
And it was so well done because you genuinely got the feeling that these were two old friends discussing a topic of the week over dinner, you know.
And they were supposed to be brand new.
Even though they didn't know.
My
and
first
they didn't know
thought
they were
was,
friends.
I wish I could be the doctor and just show up and strike up a conversation this intellectual with somebody. I was like, so envious of you. Now, granted, they had, unbeknownst to John Smith, they had a background. And even the doctor at that point doesn't quite remember. He's still skeptical as to what's going on here, although I think he suspects what's going on.
Well, he has that line.
That there's something different happening.
When he asks, where am I? And
Yes.
he says, oh, you're on Perpigillium, whatever the name of the planet was.
That was
Perfugium. Which I didn't realize was a separate planet until I went back and read the Big Finish audio synopsis.
So
it's
far.
a colony world.
I thought it was some
So
sort
far
of.
in the future.
I thought it was some sort of place in England that I didn't know about.
Yeah, I just thought it was it's a town. It's over in
Well,
jolly old
because
England.
it's set very Edwardian. It's set
Yeah.
in that era and that time and that
Feels
Yeah.
so Edwardian.
But when he says that, when he says you're on Perfugium, the doctor goes, "It can't be. I'm not ready." And that's the only hint that he gives that he knows what suddenly this is.
But then keys in that, what's he not ready for?
Yeah.
Which we get revealed later as well. But
just an enjoyable, well put together,
Gothic. That's another word. For it.
yeah.
Another one where the characters are all genuinely likable until they're not.
And they all have something not to be liked.
Yeah, I mean,
reason not to like them.
I found myself instantly drawn into, Victor, the stout-hearted, police inspector, and the horrors that he's in, and his poor wife Jacqueline, who's a little flighty but fun, and Jade, the scullery maid. Until Jacqueline insults Jade, and it's like, boy, you're kind of a not nice person, aren't you? And that's much less strong language than what I actually shouted.
The nice thing about that, though, Sean, is I think what crafts that so well is the idea that she runs a hostel for the unfortunate. And the inspector even kind of makes the comment about when they're talking about the philosophy of human nature and that she came from a very well upbringing. She was rich.
She's
they had
privileged
servants.
and-
She was privileged.
Yeah.
And so he alludes to do you do it because you feel guilty that they don't have what you had? And I thought, that's even, but then when she's very rude, it's like, it's that screech and turn the other way. And you almost think that is what it is that she feels guilty about it. But then on the flip side of that, you think, well, why would she be so brash and bold about it? While all the while you keep hearing that whisper, that evil whisper in the background going, something is influencing.
Everything that happens is there for a reason. There's nothing that's left on the table that's just kind of an afterthought. It was all from the ground up, well constructed, well scripted, exceedingly well thought out and put together, so that all of those moments that made me like these people when they turn around to bite me in the butt, because I, like you, just sucked into this thing going, oh, what's going to happen next? It all tied back in. It was all there with a nice little bow on top. Just perfect.
Well, and I loved the exploration that it wasn't that the master was the presence or the essence of the master in the house wasn't making them do things. It was bringing it to the surface. Mm-hmm. That these traits were in these people and, in theory, in everybody. And that it's just bringing it to the surface. That there's what normally we try to suppress and push down is getting a chance to stretch its legs in a way.
Right.
Which was such a fascinating thing to listen to and explore in a story.
I think to take that even a step further, when it's revealed that the inspector is the one that was doing the killing, and it's revealed that she was really in love with John, it really put those things in perspective, that the things that they were bringing up and the things that were being pushed to the front by the entity in the house was very in line with what happened and what is revealed later. Mm-hmm. So it was this wonderful, we've got these hints of mystery here, and then when it's sort of revealed everybody's motives, it makes it so believable because it was bringing that inner essence of them out, and I thought that was cleverly played too.
And I knew that she was in love with John. That was not a surprise. But the fact that Victor was the one behind the murders, I was like,
well,
I bit that hook, line, and sinker.
You,
it's like, what do you mean?
The only thing that made me suspect it was when they were having that discussion, and he said, at the same time that he was equating her upbringing, that she felt guilty for her upbringing, and that's why she ran the hostel. I think just prior to that, he was talking about the murderer. We look at, when he was talking about the murders, we look at these beings or these people as almost deserving it.
Yeah.
And he brings that up. And when he said that, I did have that hint in my mind that, I wonder if he's the murderer. He'll end up being a murderer. But then the story draws me so far away from that conclusion that then it brought me back and hit me, and I went, oh, gosh, I should have stuck with that theory.
Well, and it's such a, I don't want to say human nature, but he brings up a valid point that I think I think all of us do that when you hear something on the news that's horrific,
and then you happens to a criminal, then we don't feel as bad about it.
Yeah, depending on who it happens to, you go, oh, well, that's, and it's almost to be expected. And the clinical way that he presents that idea, I think, is probably what sells it the best. Again, there's a lot of really well done, high-minded thinking in this one, and I love the way that they we're just having a very philosophical discussion about the what ifs of this,
all framed around this nice little birthday celebration.
Yeah,
because it's innocent. They're clearly been friends, longtime friends. They care very much for John, despite his disfiguring appearance. And was anybody surprised when they're getting ready to do their seance, and she sees the person outside the window and they're on fire, and it's like describing this horrific disfigured person, and they bring him in, and then you realize it's the doctor, and you're like, did he just regenerate? What's going on here? I know where that happens. And it was just very confusing, and then all of a sudden he's okay. And then I'm suspicious. I'm like, what is going on here? He's healed up and everything. We have some sort of regenerative, it wasn't near death, so the regeneration kicked in and just healed him up or something. And I think it wasn't until later that the shoe is dropped, that death is involved, that I sort of kind of painted out maybe he really wasn't on fire and in such dire. That was just
made to look.
That
like
was his entry. That's how they had to bring him. Death brought him.
Well, and the guest inside me, I don't remember which one. One of them makes the comment is like it was a lightning bolt, like he got struck by lightning outside the house. Right. But nobody brings up well, why is he creeping around outside the window anyway? Because I kind of get the impression, as with all Edwardian tales, that this is like Batman's Wayne Manor, that he's way up on a cliff somewhere outside of town, you know. And so,
and they couldn't leave the house because of the weather.
Because of the storm.
So it would have been far enough away that it wasn't like they were running across the street or 3 blocks
somewhere
away.
isolated.
You could have been.
Yeah. So nobody questions the fact why he's there. But then, as you said, when Death kind of explains that he was brought there, it was kind of like, oh, transmat beam. That totally explains the lightning bolt, too, because it was just a and there he is. I don't know.
I think
think absolutely.
Death's involvement was the only slightly sticky point for me. I don't know how I feel about. I know what was it that we reviewed that
Human Nature?
Was it Human Nature?
Yep. At the end, he gives John's.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Which that is his ultimate payment for what he did as a child, and that's a bit alluded to in Human Nature. When you start to read between the lines as to what Big Finish did here by evolving that story, is that he was to give up the master. It was the idea, and then later on he ends up giving up himself, but only really the human side of himself that he got to explore and discover and become in Human Nature. That's the other thing, is I didn't have so much problem with Death because I've read Time Worm or the Time Worm arc, and Death has already shown up once.
To Death as an entity instead of an idea.
And I was familiar with a lot of the Virgin New Adventures has Death as a returning character, and she shows up again in at the end of Human Nature, which we have recently read. And that being said, as soon as I learned of long ago Death being a entity in the Doctor Who universe, as opposed to like when you just bring forward some sort of ghost or some what am I looking for? Metaphysical entity.
Supernatural.
Death, I equate to such Death's an elemental, obviously, or not elemental, eternal, obviously.
Yeah.
And what really helps you swallow it is we've had people like this. We've had the White Guardian, we've had the Black Guardian,
that's true.
We've had the Eternals, we've had I just equated the other day I watched the Celestial Toymaker is one of these beings. So Death is not Death as we paint it in the metaphysical, and not the Grim Reaper with the scythe. Although she could, in my opinion, appear that way if she wanted to. And it's not Death from the Pratchett books, which I've also been dealing with recently. But Death is just another Eternal, and is a physical and cognizant being. It's just time has been introduced, as by the way, in the Virgin New Adventures as well. So it's just another Eternal that I think we've had them all along, and we've kind of learned to accept them, and Death is just another element to that. So that's how I approached it.
Well, and it was interesting also hearing them, her even talking about how she's almost a concept. I can't remember the words she used, but it was almost like, well, I don't know how exactly this works since I'm blah, blah, blah. Not real, but real at the same time. It's kind of... it took me a little bit to get used to the idea of it. And by the end of it, I really loved how it ended, of the guy that the Doctor's telling the story to winds up being Death, and taking that life because they knew the Doctor wouldn't. I really like that aspect of it too.
What was interesting, I kind of come down in between the two of you, because like you, even at the end of Human Nature, there was a part of me that had an issue with the fact that Death was a thing.
It's kind of like
the
devil in Satan Pit. It's kind of like
that once you kind of cross that line, it's like, well, now where do you go with it? But I blame Pratchett because I so love his personification of Death in the Pratchett books, and how it's done that way. I really love that. So the overall idea of Death as a character showing up and doing things is kind of like, yay, Death's here. I get genuinely excited over that. But the science fiction part of me is like, Death doesn't belong in Doctor Who, so how do I reconcile these? And it's like Glenn said, it wasn't until, even after, as much as I enjoyed Human Nature, but still kind of was clinging to that, I don't know how I feel about that, knowing what was going to come, because I haven't read any of the other books that Death makes an appearance in. But listening to this, when Death made her appearance, I was suddenly like, oh, she's an elemental, or a eternal. I did the same thing.
I do the
same
thing.
She's an eternal. And if you put it in that context, then all of a sudden it's like, game on. I'm all right with this. It just clicks.
Yeah, it does. It does click a lot better thinking of it as Eternal.
Think of Q.
Well,
and then we have those. So would she take
in that
part
same
in that same
realm?
realm. I mean, as powerful as Q is compared to a human. But, But Q in and of itself is just another alien species. So I kind of just chalk that up to differently. But the Eternals, and maybe it's because the Eternals have been not well defined.
Well,
like the White Guardian and the Black Guardian and this kind of stuff. It's just kind of like
what we do know about the Eternals is the Eternals existed in our realm before time, before the harnessing of black holes, before all of that, and we know that. And what happened was the Eternals were shoved outside of our existence and existed on another plane, another level. And so somehow, what's not explained is why they continue to interact in our existence, in our reality. And that's what's never been really clarified throughout. But we know enough history that the Elementals existed long before anything did.
Other than to suspect that it's a Clash of the Titans, kind of the gods playing games with the mortals.
That's where it starts to lose me, because I then you have to equate it to the mythology, and I don't think that's I don't agree with that aspect of it, because I think of them more like Q. I think of them more like Q as being just another alien species. They're so old and ancient and are on another level than any other species in our reality. So that's where I kind of come down on.
But either way, it unlocked
it's cheating.
it.
Don't get me wrong.
Well, what's funny is that I buy death far more easily than the idea that there was a genuine ghost, or that the house was haunted, or that there was a curse.
And that's where
any of that nonsense. Oh, death was responsible? Okay. I mean,
that's where I come down on it, yeah.
The moon's an egg.
Yeah. I mean, it fundamentally unlocks that mental block I have that says, all right, I'm good with this. So,
the other thing I want to talk about is I really liked the backstory and history we got with the Master and the Doctor. About that story of them being picked on. One of the great things I loved about it was when did this come out and when was it written?
2003. It would have been the 40th anniversary.
So it would have been.
Let me just real quick before we say, Omega, the Master, and Davros were all part of Big Finish's lead up to the 40th anniversary, culminating with Zagreus. Each Doctor got a specialized.
Yeah.
So
the fact that the show hasn't come back yet,
right?
No,
and everything they've done with the Master since then, this still fits perfectly.
Oh, sure, I think so too.
That's what I loved most about it, was that we got a little glimpse of their childhood and their past, and it still fits with what they've eventually done. I don't know if that's partially because RTD was a fan of Big Finish, or it didn't want to contradict it, or if it was just such a small little slice that it still works.
Well, that I agree. I think you're right. And I think a lot of that is true. But the seed is cast in Terror the Autons when the Doctor says they were schoolmates. They went together at the academy. So they already set that seed that they were once friends, that the Master and he had a different relationship.
This is such a great way to
expound on that. Yes, agreed. And I think you're right. I think Russell and crew took that idea and built and continue to build on that.
Because I can't think of any other time in Classic Who that it's really referenced that they were old school chums.
The King's Demons, I think there's not that, but there's another mention in King's Demons when he's talking to Tegan or somebody about the Master. There's another, and I didn't realize this at the time we watched it or the time I had seen it. I read that in culmination with something else back, and I think when I was developing a Master archive, there is something mentioned in there that also pads out a little bit more
specifically, I think it's when it's in the Five Doctors when he meets the First Doctor, and the First Doctor says, "Do I know you?" And he says, "Believe it or not, we were at the academy together." And he flat out tells him
that was actually. That's not what I'm thinking of, but that is another instance.
Another instance.
But that was Terrence Dicks calling back to Terror of the
Yeah.
Autons, that being mentioned in Terror of the Autons. And it was almost a tongue-in-cheek, well, we didn't know that back when when the first Doctor was around. And so it was kind of a meta humor that by saying, believe it or not, we were once. That's why that is dropped, because it was more of a fan service of nod nod wink wink.
That didn't exist.
we
back
made
then.
this up when the third Doctor came along, and now we've got the first Doctor to deal with again. So we'll just drop that fun line in there. But I believe it was King's Demons where there's another thing that builds on the relationship between you and the Doctor. And I maybe remember
is it King's Demons that. Or is it Planet of Fire when he says...
Maybe it is Planet of Fire. It's similar in the Fifth Doctor's era.
He's getting ready to dispatch him, and he says, won't you even help your own? And everybody wants, is he his brother or not?
That's what it was. That's what it is.
Is that the
Planet
one?
of Fire. You're right. That's the one.
And I also really like the exploration that how the Master has become Death's champion, like the Doctor is Time's champion. It's just, there's so much good in this thing.
Well, and so when we get the backstory, which, I don't know, did anybody else get shades of Lord of the Rings with Smeagol on the boat in the water? I don't know why, but as he's explaining the story, they went down to the...
Yeah, I can see that.
Went down to the water side. It was like, that was what was playing out in my head. It was like, oh, this was directed by Peter Jackson, because here's this segment. But when we get the story about the one boy rose up and clubbed him and just, how willingly were we to just accept that that's who it was, that it was the Master, just right off the bat, because of that human nature?
I suspected that because of where the story was developing, that we were going to get the switcheroo and realize that it was
I suspected it at first, too. But then, once again...
so sucked in.
They talk you out of it.
They talk me
really
out
talk
of it.
you out
And just it's the man. Well, it wouldn't be the Doctor. And I thought to myself, it could be the Doctor. And I thought, no... They know us well enough to know that we wouldn't accept him as a killer, even as a child, even in self-defense, even as, this. That I just don't think we're ready for that. But then when the reveal comes that it was the Doctor, in fact, that did this, my brain starts backpedaling and going, that makes so much perfect sense for why he leaves, for why he goes out, for why he's so desperate to save everybody, for why he's a pacifist most of the time, for why he's, just that one, just that.
It does. It really does. It's a very good character building for the Doctor. Retroactively looking at the character of the Doctor, it really does build a lot onto the character. I think the other thing that was done specifically well is if it had been the Fifth Doctor or even the Sixth Doctor in this story, it would have been harder to buy that. But because it's the Seventh Doctor and we'd already seen glimpses of the darker Doctor, the more vengeful Doctor, I think you're able to buy it just that much better.
And how great was it to hear Death say, but you don't do that anymore, do you? You don't play the spoons. You don't mix up your metaphors.
Yeah.
Now you're all plots and mechanicians. And then it was like, fan service. Yes, please. Can I have a side order of that?
Oh, and celebrating the 40th anniversary, that's a nice way to recognize what Big Finish has done with the character.
That's certainly
to
true.
that point.
Yeah.
This I think I'd read when I was doing some research on the Virgin New Adventures. This is where I had read that early on that Big Finish had done what Doctor Who magazine had done and just was kind of ignoring what had happened in the Big Finish or the Virgin New Adventure stuff, and had kind of said, okay, well that stuff kind of happened here on another timeline. This doesn't really exist. And it was at this point that Big Finish started going. And I think it's when they started bringing in writers and people that had worked with, that had written stuff for Big Finish, is they said, well, maybe we'll tweak back to that. And that's why Death suddenly becomes, and so they
had the Summerfield reference.
Exactly. And they brought Bernie in, and they had that license already before they had Doctor Who, and so they started acknowledging at this point started acknowledging more and more of the Virgin New Adventure Doctor stories and bringing those into the fold as well and saying, okay, we're not going to ignore them like the comics and Doctor Who magazine did. We got a whole different thing happening over here, but which ironically enough, then they turn around and also accept a lot of the stuff that was happened in the comics because they've got Gary Russell on board. We get Frobisher's story and that kind of stuff. So
it's all one big happy canon.
it is. It really is.
It drove me nuts. I
Frustrates those purists, but how do I make that work?
I went running to the internet in the middle of part 4 to figure out who Jade/Death was. She was fantastic, but she sounded vaguely familiar to me. Charlie Hayes. I don't recognize the name. I don't recognize the actress. I'm sorry. You were great. But what I did stumble upon was Victor.
Yeah.
The actor who played Victor was Philip Maddock, who he's been in many, many things in Doctor Who, but he will forever and always for me be Brandon Morbius. He was Solomon.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And as soon as I read that, Victor spoke the next line, and I went, "Oh, it is him!" I don't know why I didn't cue into that earlier through the thing. Especially because it's such a similar story that we're in a house, we're in an isolated place, and there's a storm, and
Kind of a similar role.
yeah, kind of, okay, yeah, there he is. There's Solomon. Yay!
I'd have had that revelation, but I had read something before when I don't think it was when we did Brandon Morbius, but I was reading somewhere other things that
he had done.
Yeah, he had done, and that was one of those ones that I went, oh yeah, of course.
So yay! I don't know that I can gush over this one enough, quite honestly. It's just good.
Something that I think that this piqued my interest, and we certainly aren't going to get to the very much of the Virgin New Adventure anytime soon, but I kind of thought, when we start running out of Adversary Archives, we can do it on Death.
Yeah.
Which might be kind of fun, and something a little different, so I'm excited for that.
When we get to that one, can the title of the episode be in all capital letters?
Death. Death becomes us.
That's a Pratchett joke. Death speaks in all capital letters.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
and it's
all
referenced
caps.
in the books. Like when Death talks, it's in all capital letters. And then somebody else will comment, Death speaks in all capital letters.
I thought Pratt. I don't know how much you want to know here, but when the other demon shows up with the hood and pretending to be Death, shows up and he's not writing in caps. Terry's not writing in caps. I thought, did he mess up here? It wasn't until it was revealed that it wasn't him that I went, clever. I should have caught on to that. I thought it was an error. I thought it was an editing error. Oh, your editor didn't catch that.
Is it the same as when, oh my God, there's a shark in the water and everybody panics, but there was no theme music. I should have cued into that.
All right. Well, has you guys got anything else to talk about? I could talk about this all night because it was such a wonderful story, but there's not a lot
Those
more.
are the main points I wanted to talk about.
All right. But Sean, what's coming up next on the schedule?
Next week on the schedule, Deep Breath. No, I mean we're watching Deep Breath.
I thought maybe you were going to have some sort of huge revelation or something. So.
We've been canceled.
Oh.
No, just kidding. For Friday Night Who, we're going to do Deep Breath. So I hope you all bought your season 8 box sets. No, got your Blu-ray ready to go.
Yeah, Blu-ray.
I have it all. I bought it all on iTunes last year.
Or if you bought it all on
I'm good to go.
iTunes, we're getting some Capaldi on the mix, so Deep Breath next week. And because we've already reviewed Deep Breath, they will continue into some more Big Finish. We're going to do the 8th Doctor Adventures. The next two in line are number 3, Horror of Glam Rock, and number 4, Immortal Beloved. So yay, another quarter is gone, so it's time for some more Paul McGann to come back on the program.
Is that how we're measuring it now, quarters?
I do. I don't know if you've noticed, but over the last
noticed.
4 years,
I don't
Paul
keep
McGann,
track of quarters.
Every 3 months, I need some Paul McGann fix.
I'm fine if it's more frequent.
I would be too, honestly. But somebody over there is like, slow down on the big fix.
Once a month, I'm okay with.
Well, if you keep bringing stuff to the table like the Master and the 8th Doctor stuff, which has been really good so far, I Can't complain too much. Can't complain too loudly anyway.
And now that we're in the Eighth Doctor, New Adventures to be said, with hour-long, 45-minute episodes, it's a bit easier to get them done than trying to get several long episodes in.
Well, and we're this is more behind the scenes thing, but we're also kind of at a stymied point where we're trying to figure out how much backstory with the Virgin New Adventures do we need before we get into a couple of the 6th and 7th Doctor stories that are coming up that we really need to get to before, I would really like to, continue with Charlie's story since we know that she's with 6, but I don't feel like we can justifiably do that until we finish up with Evelyn. Or at least run out the ones that were coming beforehand. Not that we've done anything in order for you, Keith, but I want to give you this.
If we're not doing Doctor Who proper in order, so I think that at the very least we should be doing the Big Finish stuff in order for the most part.
We've at least kept 8
so that we don't go back and review a story that I thought should have been really good had I reviewed it 2 years ago.
I want to try and give that to Keith. That's my one legacy to bequeath to you, my son.
Hey,
we did some of this in order.
We did New Who in order. No, we didn't.
No, we didn't. We've done Peter Capaldi in order. I can give you that one.
We did Matt Smith in order.
No,
we started with.
We did Matt Smith
we
in
didn't.
order.
We did not. We started with Christmas Carol.
Oh, that's true.
You still
we
had to
did
go
Christopher
back
Eccleston in order.
Yeah, but
and David Tennant in order.
Yeah, but
you don't count the ones isolated
that's
out.
Certainly true.
After.
So
whatever.
Anyway, the Horror of Glam Rock and Immortal Beloved. So you've got some time to listen to those, and then the following week we're going to start the first 3 parts of Genesis of the Daleks with Tom Baker, which will bring on our Beyond the Doctor with Tom Baker doing Sherlock Holmes in The Hound of the Baskervilles from 1982, which appears to be widely available on the YouTubes.
As of now.
As of right now. And you said it's 4 parts?
It is 4 episodes.
Four episodes of that, so you may want to go and investigate finding those now. And then we'll finish...
4 half-hour episodes, I'm assuming?
I want to say they're 45 minutes.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Okay.
I may be wrong. On that, but I seem to think they were nearly an hour.
Let me pull up my computer.
Let me think about it here. 1, 2... Well, no, because each one of them was split into 3 parts, and you can only get 10 minutes on YouTube if you don't have the big account. You don't pay the money account. So it may have been 30 minutes then a piece. That's the thing. You'll have, if you find them on YouTube, you may have to find a playlist because at least the places I've seen them, they're broken into 10 minutes a piece so that they could fit them on free YouTube services. And so
plan on 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah, but I found if you link them up in a playlist, they run right together. You have a little bit of buffering in there.
30-minute
right
episodes.
On the next one.
Okay, so plan on 2 hours. And then on finishing out April on the 27th, we will finish out Genesis of the Daleks. And then and what I think is an interesting topic for episode number 226, are the Daleks better off without Davros? So put your thinking caps on for that one.
All right. Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
All right. That's going to do it for this week. Until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.